what's happening to you these days? Having lots of fun? Believe me, I know some folks that are in for some fun.
Take a minute. See what's in it.
But you can see how dangerous this could be.
But first, we're going to have a little fun tonight, folks.
It's time for the Geeky Brummie podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Geeky Brummie podcast, or vlogcast, or vodcast. I can never remember what the live versions of these are called. But it's me, your host, Mr. Ryan Parrish, and joining me today is Mr. Keith Bloomfield.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Mr. Lee Price, who's down there. Yeah, that one. Yeah, and Mr. Matt Lovell, who's in that corner. Yeah, welcome for our 5th anniversary. Yeah. 5 years. People get less for murder. How are we all doing? Keith, what have you been up to since the last time we recorded?
The last time we recorded. What I've been mostly doing is since last night, because Disney Plus put The Muppets, the original 1970s show, on their stream, so you can watch all 5 seasons, which I'm more excited about than should be allowed. But the thing that's fascinating the most is what was considered celebrities. But then again, if they put the Muppet Show out now, it'd be Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion and Donald Glover. Yeah, but then I'm going through the list of stars that are on the Muppets, and it's like Ethel Merman, Stiller. Like some people I can't even remember. You know, obviously there's the classic ones like Mark Hamill.
I was gonna say, wasn't like the entire cast of Star Wars on the Muppets at least once?
They weren't in it until season 4. So for years and years, and I remember watching this on ATV as it was back in the 70s. It was like Sunday afternoon, about 5:15, and it was like these are what was considered celebrities. In the 70s. And it's quite incredible. There's a list of names. You just go Cesar Romero or something. You think, oh my God, kids today just don't know how unlucky they are, because we had we had Ethel Merman to entertain them.
Dick Van Dyke.
I do believe Dick Van Dyke is on there. Zero Mostel, I think, is on there. I'm just
Yeah.
people, who are they?
Bob Hope.
Yeah, Bob Hope's in there. I think Gene Kelly's on at one point as well.
Yeah.
It's like stars who were stars like in the 1940s. They were hugely popular in the 1970s.
Yeah.
They didn't have the Bay City Rollers. Obviously, a very disappointing scenario.
Yeah.
No Nokens. But yeah, I'm going to go through the entire Muppets back catalogue.
It's perfect time.
It's the Treasure Island. I think he's 30 years old or something. It was like a couple of days ago.
Would be,
The anniversary of it being released.
Upstage Lads. This is the number. one of the greatest musicals of all time.
What do you think, Treasure Island or Christmas Carol? I think Christmas Carol is still the best one for me.
It's very specifically a Christmas thing, though, Treasure
Yeah.
Island.
Treasure Island. We all cut off our legs and hobble around like pirates over Christmas. Yeah.
I do love a lot about the Treasure Island though as well. It's got some great songs. As I always say, it's Hans Zimmer's greatest score. You get at me at 5 Hotel on that. And the other big announcement this week is that I managed to get a copy of Rachel Smith, who, if people followed us online before, you would know that we've been talking a lot about her quarantine comics, and then she did hourly comics a couple of weeks ago, and she's packaged them all together in a lovely little £3 package you can get through our Etsy store. So everything she did for the days in there, and you get a postcard and a business card as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got £3 to spare, Rachel's well worth looking at that. I think it's Rachel _ is her Twitter. We'll put that out at some point later on.
Yeah.
So go and support artists.
Mm-hmm. And it is a beautiful piece of work that she does on. Those business cards are really nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've got someone in chat pointing out that they can barely hear us.
Right, okay, I shall see if I can fix that with the audio. This is where it all goes wrong.
Yeah, good. Yep.
They're just saying it's just you they can hear, Ryan.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It's all a ruse. It's the Ryan show.
So I have been watching that Cecil Hotel documentary on Netflix. As a fan of weird internet mysteries, it is, of course, something that was right up my street, and I have seen that original, like, elevator video from that hotel before Lisa Lamb went missing. Very, very interesting documentary. It's also, like, I enjoyed it mostly because they were trying to cut through the weird conspiracy nonsense that exists online around it, trying to get past all the weird supernatural angle and find out, like, what really happened, what was really going on. And it was really, really interesting to see, like, they brought in just the state of the era around the hotel. There was things like interviews with the management who were, you know, the manager just is not the kind of person you expect it to be at all, and it's great. And it's just my favorite thing about it was just when you've got all these, like, conspiracy theorists and web sleuths talking about, like, you know, oh, they were covering up this thing and they were covering up this thing, and then you got the coroner turn around and say, yeah, we were just waiting for the toxicology results to come back. There wasn't a conspiracy. It just takes a while for those results to come through. And it's just funny when you've got these, like, actual LAPD detectives who are very serious in the process and, you know, putting evidence together properly, and then you go, yeah, but what if she was a biological weapon? And it's like, come on, man.
That's the thing with always the detective series. There's always got to be an ulterior behind it somewhere, hasn't there? That's always the thing. But
well, that's what struck me watching it, though, is that you've got all these web sleuths who clearly have watched far too many crime dramas, where, like, the toxicology, they send off the toxicology report, go out for a coffee, come back, it's on their desk, which is not how it works in real life. And policing in real life is a lot more boring than anything that's in those. And when things take longer than expected and just they just scream conspiracy, it's like, no, it's just that they've got, like, a backlog of cases for the past 4 weeks, and it's now at the end of the queue. So it's like, oh, why did it take till June for the results to come out? Because they had enough cases that it took them until June to do the tests. Yeah.
And you've been celebrating your own special anniversary, I should say, rather than birthday. It's birthday, anniversary, same kind of thing.
Yeah. In a weird coincidence, this podcast and my YouTube channel have the exact same anniversary. The 19th February is when we both started our respective projects. So for the whole week, I've been doing a retrospective series of videos, just looking back at content I used to do and where I went right, where I went wrong, that sort of thing, and sort of ending it in a big sort of, because I'd had a big relaunch last year and changed all the content I was doing, and just kind of looked back at how that was performing and where things go next. Mm-hmm. So that was fun.
There's some really big, interesting changes coming on. I'm really looking forward to the Chapter Select series. That's where it comes in.
I mean, like, fundamentally, it's going to be the same as Losing the Plot, but it's just the name is different.
Yeah.
I mean, I've renamed all of those videos anyway already.
The great renaming.
Yes. It's just going to be confusing when you watch them back, and I'm explicitly calling it Losing the Plot in the episode, but whatever. I've put it in the description, I've explained it, it's fine.
Matt, how about yourself? What have you been up to the last few weeks since we spoke to you?
So since we've been obviously back into lockdown, I've sort of gone and regressed back to my teenage self. So I've been in my room playing a lot of games, listening to a lot of, like, angry music I did back when I was a teenager. And the latest sort of iteration of this is I've started going back and watching Misfits, which is 2009 drama about the group of sort of young offenders who get caught in a freak storm, and they all have superpowers. And rewatching it just reminds me of just how much I loved that kind of period of Channel 4, where it was, like, really good story writing. So you had Skins as well, but it's really good story writing, really good music, and they had a really good balance of kind of drama, comedy. You know, it was always quite good. And also, this was before, I guess, the whole superhero sort of thing really got back into it. So before Marvel Cinematic Universe really started going, you started having those more things on TV. So it was quite a nice way of doing what would happen if a bunch of sort of London teenagers get superpowers, and that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's my first introduction to Robert Sheehan, who Keith absolutely loves in The Umbrella Academy. I think he's your standout character for that. But surprisingly, how many like young, famous English actors come out of that series, especially into Game of Thrones. There was a lot of crossover.
Yeah, sort of Robert Sheehan played Nathan. Like his mum was Catherine Stark.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So yeah, there's loads of it, and also I can't pronounce his name. Ian Ryan.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, he became the Ramsay Bolton, the like most hated character since Joffrey. So it's really interesting seeing where they all sort of like grassroots came from.
I apologise for that.
That was Ian Ryan going just past on his motorcycle, I believe.
Yeah.
Mispronouncing his name is going to hit me.
Yeah, I love Misfits. It's a show that it was a cult favourite, but I don't think it got enough recognition at the time it was out. But it's the joy of streaming now that you can catch back up on quality shows like this. And I think it was one of those shows where it takes a really odd turn, or is it season 3 where Robert Sheehan decides to leave and then like they bring in pretty much a brand new cast.
Yeah, they kind of replaced it over a couple of seasons, but you get Joe Geigen, who's brilliant because he's just himself. Because he does Brassic now, which is just kind of almost a kind of twin to Misfits. It's the same kind of feel, except they haven't got superpowers. Misfits was great because I mean, obviously, it had some of the best swearing on TV, which isn't a bad thing.
Yeah,
good swearing, I like it. But yeah, the whole thing about that show was really great. The whole concept of the superpowers and how you would misuse them.
Yeah.
It was really good. Great show.
Yeah. The milk one still gets me every time I watch that episode. No spoilers there, but yeah, the milk episode is a standout.
And I think just the last point was just the music, because I was rewatching it being like the Rapture, you had LCD sound system, that kind of thing. And I'm just there being like one song after the other. I was there being like, oh my god, yes, like it was a massive nostalgia.
Was it like a night out in Snobs around 2009, 2010 for you?
Yeah, I think it perfectly captures the British sensibility around like comics and superheroes as well. Because in America you get CW shows like Arrow and The Flash and whatever it is, and in Britain you get Misfits. So yeah, we know how to do it in Britain.
So Ryan, what have you been up to?
Well, not only have I been getting ready for this birthday stream, I will be appearing on Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour, who's another podcast, and you'll be hearing a little bit from Stacey later on in the show. But I was the guest host for her podcast for this month, and it made me need to rewatch Alien and Alien Covenant, and I realised how great Alien is and how bad Alien Covenant is, just as a comparison between like both ends of the Alien spectrum. The only thing I would say for Alien Covenant is it makes Prometheus better somehow, which seems to be impossible. But yeah, it's like Ridley Scott at the start and his end of his career. You're like, there's some mistranslation gone in there. But I went down this big rabbit hole of like the Alien connected universe, because you got to include Predator in there, of course. And then there's the Soldier movie with Kurt Russell because of the Blade Runner connection with Weyland-Yutani Corp. And then you've also got Firefly and Serenity mixed in there. It's kind of like this weird alternate space universe, that a little bit of a rabbit hole. Also, finally rewatched all of the Harry Potter movies. Rewatched the final space trailer about 30 times now. Which just looks so dark, depressing and miserable, but at the main time amazing. And it's like,
yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, if you've not watched Final Space, I really do recommend it. Both series are streaming on Netflix in the UK. I think it's moved to HBO Max in the US if you're over there. So really do go check those out. They are amazing shows to watch. Go and see that. But other than that, pretty much that's been it for my geeky things. Oh, and getting some lovely Geeky Brummie t-shirts printed, which we're all wearing.
I'll do my Superman reveal.
Yeah, And we've also
Obviously, I need to work out a little bit more.
but right now we're going into Comic of the Week, and then we'll be back after that for the Setting the Scene challenge. So we'll see you shortly.
And now it's time to take a look at some recent comics in the Geeky Brummie pull list. This week from Boom Studios, we have Once and Future number 16. This is written by Kieran Gillen with art by Dan Mora and colours by Tamara Bonvillain. In this issue, surrounded by British government forces, Nimue calls for backup, but will Merlin and Galahad help stop the opposition or expose Britain to the truth? Meanwhile, British and Duncan are trapped in the other world, and blocking their exit is Arthur's greatest knight, Lancelot. Coming up from Marvel Comics, we have New Mutants number 16. This is written by Vita Alia with art by Rod Reese, and in this issue, To Be Reborn in the Wild Hunt. Someone is looking for their friends in all the wrong places. Someone else is missing without a trace, and plans which have long been in motion begin to unfurl. Then we have X-Men number 18, written by Jonathan Hickman, with art by Mahmoud Azhar. In this issue, Inside the Vault. It's been a long time since the team went into the vault. A long time. And the last comic we're looking at from IDW is Star Trek Year 5, number 19. This is written by Jim McCann with art by Angel Hernandez. In this issue, a pandemic raging across Alpha Centauri, a powerful enemy aboard the Enterprise. With death lurking around every corner, the crew will face one of their greatest challenges yet in this shocking conclusion. And finally, Geeky Brummie is greatly saddened to hear that writer Cy Spencer has passed away suddenly this week. Cy worked for many years on titles like 2000 AD, Judge Dredd magazine, Vertigo titles like Hellblazer and Neil Gaiman's Books of Magic. In later years, he's gone on to write things like The Velvet Underground, Slash and Burn, and Klaxon, and his own title Bodies. Geeky Brummie, along with all of the comics community, extend their heartfelt condolences to Cy's family and friends. And on that sad note, it's back to the main show.
And we're back. Thanks very much for the round of the comics there, Keith. Check out the Geeky Brummie website, and everything is on there every Wednesday where Keith goes through and does a great pull list, massive selection of some of the best comic books for your collection. And anything else in that? You do a meanwhile section as well, Keith, to keep us up to date on comic news?
Yeah, this week was just a roundup of a couple of announcements from 2000 AD and Rebellion. And they just announced a bunch of audio plays that they're doing based around Slain, Halo Jones, and Judge Dredd. They're specials for the year, and also some other books that they've got coming out later on in the year. So it's always worth checking out the meanwhile section for a bit of news.
Mm-hmm. Right, it's now time for the Setting the Scene challenge. So if you've not listened to the podcast previously, we usually take a movie or TV series or a bit of pop culture, and then we challenge ourselves to recreate a key moment or scene from that particular film or TV series, and then have a face-off on our Twitter by a poll each few episodes. But I've decided to change it up this week, so I'm not going to get involved because I'm running the desk at the same time as presenting today. But I'm going to set Keith, Lee, and Matt the challenge of recreating a video game over the course of the show.
Easy.
For Lee, this is probably the easiest competition ever, but I think Keith and Matt are probably slightly a bit worried about this one. But I have chosen, considering we had a Nintendo Direct this week.
I mean, already you can see video game merchandise right behind me.
Yeah, but because it was a Nintendo Direct this week, I thought I'd choose the task of recreating a Mario video game. So it's got to be from the main Mario series. So you can't have like Super Smash Brothers or Mario Sonic, the Olympic games. It's got to be a Mario game. So over the course of the show, whilst we're playing out some of the interviews, these guys will go away and beaver off and see what they can come up with.
So when you say main Mario series, do you mean just the platformers?
Do we allow rabbits? I'm thinking just the platformers.
Okay.
We'll include Galaxy and Sunshine and those ones like that. Basically, where Mario is the main character.
Yeah. So
I
no
think
carts or anything.
Yeah, at this point, that's just not relevant. It's just going to be difficult enough as it is.
Yeah.
Right, so we're going into the interview now. The lovely Adam Woodall, who was our first ever guest 5 years ago on the Geeky Brummie show. We decided to catch up with him and see what he's doing around 3D printer and maker spaces, and go and check it out. So back in a second. Adam, welcome back for our 5th anniversary special.
Flipping heck, it's been 5 years. I think I was on your show twice.
Yeah, you were our first ever guest back on the first ever show 5 years ago.
I remember you being quite nervous.
Yeah,
there was quite. I was on it a few months later again, I think, and it was. You'd obviously got the hang of it by then, but I think it was quite. It was quite fun. It was in that little room in Digbeth.
Yeah, it was crazy to think it's been 5 years since that first show. We were the first ever live show on Brum Radio at the time, and yeah,
were you the first one?
Yeah, we were.
I didn't realise.
We launched on that day, on that Saturday, and we were like the first official live show. It had all been just pre-recorded music before then.
Oh, flipping heck. Flipping heck. But you survived. You're still doing it. You haven't worked. You've survived it.
Yeah, the world's changed a bit now. We're a podcast now rather than a radio show, but
yeah, well, it's but hey, still doing it. It's,
yeah, still doing it. So we thought we'd invite back some great and wonderful guests of the past, and of course, as you being our first ever guest when you was back on talking about Fizzpop back many moons ago, I thought we'd catch up with you, see how you've been coping over the lockdown and the pandemic, and what you've been up to, and how your geeky interests have been pulling through over that time.
I think the lockdown has been interesting. I think because I'm working in IT as my day job, I think I'm lucky that I've been really busy throughout. Kept working, and it's and in some respects, I've got to do projects that I wouldn't have got involved in otherwise. So it's been quite fun from that point of view. But I think I've not had the free time I had for some of my projects. But I'm looking forward to them all coming back. So one of my, I'm still involved in Fizzpop. We have an online meeting every Wednesday for members, and we'll have a chat about what we're doing and what's going on. So we're all sort of working on projects still. I think a lot of the members we're sort of all working on stuff when we come back. We're thinking of having, and at the moment we haven't set the rules yet, but we're thinking of having a mini robot sumo league, so people can build mini robots and have mini robots in wrestling. So when we can have events again, we can all get together and sort of have miniature robot battles. So we've been chatting about that a lot over last year. A lot of us started building them. I haven't got mine here. It's somewhere else, but so we've been doing that. So that sort of carried on in the background. It's obviously not as fun without having a physical space with laser cutters and and tools, because I think a lot of my tools, because of work taking over my house, have ended up in the shed. So a lot of my stuff's in the shed. So I don't have quite as much time as home, just because I need to have a bit of a divide between sort of work and my personal life. I think the other thing that we're kind of working on in the background is 3D Meetup, which we've done 2 of. They're becoming a really popular event. We got some quite good press, which is just an event where we get the 3D printing community together, people who build printers, people who are interested in 3D printing. We've done 2 of those. The last one was in 2019. Obviously couldn't do it last year. It's very much a physical event, but obviously we're constantly trying to keep that alive and have a plan for when it's safe to do that event again. I think we got about 280 people for the last one we did in Birmingham, but if you look at the ones around Europe, you'll get a lot of them have over 1,000 attendees. So we were hoping last year would have been our year for that, and we were ready to organise a big event. But then we just can't afford to commit the cash to booking venues until COVID's gone away, really. But it's an interesting event, and it will be back, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, because as you said, maker spaces and 3D printing, and a lot of that, and a lot of the innovation and growth comes from being able to speak to somebody in a kind of face-to-face kind of view and demonstrating the product and showing what it can do. But pivoting to online, has it been a bit of a difficult thing for that kind of 3D printing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people who came to 3D Meetup, we have a little groups of us that chat on Twitter occasionally and things like that. I think early in lockdown, 3D printing was massive. So I helped loads of people get their printers going, because we were printing like ear protectors for people wearing masks all day. I think we sent I think we must have done several thousand that went into hospitals and care homes around Birmingham. But then obviously once production had come up and they could buy them off the shelf for pence, people didn't need to 3D print them at home. But a lot of us sort of, the first 3 months of lockdown, put a lot of effort into printing things like face shields and things like that. It was interesting. It was quite nice to be part of that. I was working, so I had a 3D printer above my head here, printing off stuff pretty much all day, every day for about 2 months. Which was quite nice to be part of that. And because we sort of, a lot of makers and people like myself do focus on events. Like we know, like last year we would have had a EMF camp, there would have been 3D meetup. EMF camp's a big sort of maker camp where people come from all over Europe and camp out and show off projects and make things in a big field every other year. They usually run them, and we didn't have those events last year. Like in Maker Central, anything, we just didn't have them. So some of us decided to try and fix our houses or just try and get involved in things. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting looking back on this period for like the whole maker community of sort of, some people would have done amazing projects because they have finally had time to do it, and other of us would have sort of, without that community to drive us and seeing people, probably haven't done as much. I think it's be quite interesting to see what comes out of it in a year, sort of a year after sort of COVID. I think that will be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to hear about that rapid scaling up at the time, as you mentioned at the start of the pandemic, and how something like a 3D printer, which sounds like it's just futuristic technology, but can be really useful in the situation where stuff needs to be made fast and it's just not available in large scale, whereas people can just make it at home.
Yeah, and I think there's a few of us in Birmingham doing quite a lot, and someone was going around collecting during the first lockdown, collecting them for everyone's houses, and then getting them delivered. I know a lot went to the sort of QE, and a lot went to the women's hospital and various care homes and things like that, because I think just suddenly having to wear a mask every day, but was and I think there was just a supply shortage on lots of things. I think the same is true in the maker community. A lot of people took up sewing to make face masks. And certainly there was members of FizzPop who made hundreds of face masks for people, which I think is really positive. I know it's it was a terrible time, but it was quite nice to see that in amongst all the bad news.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I think that's sort of where we were.
Yeah, I think having that community support really probably has a lot more impact than people think, especially where you can do like stuff like, as you said, sewing face masks and distributing those and things like that, where you wouldn't expect it to come from that kind of source. It's great to see the maker community getting involved with that. But more about yourself. How have you been coping with lockdown? I mean, I know it's put a lot of kibosh on your plans and things you were planning to work on.
Well, I got slightly more into computer games. My wife bought me a Switch Christmas 2019, so I played quite a lot of. I played quite a lot on Switch and got into computer games a little bit more. So I quite enjoyed. I've played. What did I buy? It was lockdown. I decided to buy Luigi's Mansion, and it was just quite a nice, simple game to play after work. Sometimes while doing other things, and I've got quite into that, and I've sort of rediscovered gaming slightly that I kind of hadn't had time to do for a few years. So I've quite enjoyed. I don't think I'm ever going to be a massive, gamer who could play all weekends, but I've quite enjoyed the Switch. The Switch I've become quite a big fan of. I've just started playing 3D All Stars, which is the sort of 3 Mario games I play. But I'm quite enjoying that because they don't require too much head sort of thinking about. I'm quite enjoying that. And also I think the other thing, obviously, we have had some quite good TV programs during. We discovered some new ones during lockdown. I think one of the first ones we found was Kim's Convenience. I think we really enjoyed that.
Absolutely love that. It's one of mine and my wife's favourite shows.
Because I went on honeymoon to Toronto, so we were spotting landmarks, and we think we walked past the shop.
Yeah,
like we're fairly sure we did, but we got quite obsessed with Kim's Convenience, which is a show that we've never thought about before, but it just came up on Netflix. We're like, I might as well watch the first episode, and then we'd watched them all, and we're waiting for the new ones now. But and Disney Plus starting, that was quite interesting. So quite, so in the evenings when I'm working more hours at the moment, but there's after work, it's quite nice to have something to watch, and a lot of shows have come back. I also, and I think this is, and I will confess this now just publicly, I also got quite hooked on the new DuckTales on Disney Plus. I decided I was going to watch that at one point. Because like a lot of the voices you recognise, particularly there's quite a few, David Tennant.
David Tennant, yeah, it's quite a big name.
Catherine Tate's in there. It's quite fun watching it for that project. So I've been loads of sort of stuff. I miss the cinema, but I think we've watched quite a lot of series we might not have found the time to watch otherwise. Keeping sane. It's I think I also built a shed which I'm going to turn into a little mini makerspace at some point, probably because I'm missing a makerspace. That arrived unfortunately just as the weather was changing, so I haven't done much more with it. So I've been busy. Got lots of projects, lots of things that I think I'm quite confident that I think I've stayed relatively sane. But there's I think that's what I was up to. I think during lockdown.
Yeah, it's interesting to say about sheds. I think there's been like a massive 1,000% like increase on people buying sheds, just purely as to have that room for being a home office or somewhere to work or somewhere that you can just like get out the house, so like have that separation between home and work.
Yeah, I think, but also I think for me, because like I'm in the spare room now of my house, which got bunk beds behind me. It's also to try and get some work separation. So a lot of my maker stuff is now in the shed, but it's also because I'm not in the same place that I'm doing my day job. I think that was part of the logic behind it.
Yeah, and everybody needs a shed. It's kind of like one of those things. Everybody needs somewhere to go and tinker and like do their own little things.
Yeah.
I'm planning to move our recording studio out of what is currently our front room into a shed in the studio at some point.
Yeah, that'll be a good project, I think, for this year. I think
definitely. You mentioned the Switch. I think it's still one of the best consoles for just pick up and play, because you don't have to wait 25 minutes for an update for a start off. It's mostly just game cartridges.
Obviously I work in IT. I quite like it, but also actually having the option to play on the TV when you want to. But actually, if my wife's watching something on TV that I'm not particularly interested in, we can still be in the room together and still carry on. I think a lot of the games I've played, which is quite nice, you don't really need to even have the sound on. So if someone else is doing something else in the room, you can get away with not. And I think I've really enjoyed the Switch. I owned a GameCube, which was my last Nintendo console I owned.
Yeah.
And I played relatively like everyone did on the Wii. We've had, but I'm quite enjoying the Switch. I think it's a good mix of both. It reminds me very much of when I was in the original Game Boy, which I had an original Game Boy, and I've spent many hours playing on that. I think it kind of it's so good. And the online play, I quite enjoy Mario Kart Online. That's quite fun.
Yeah, we like to have a weekly tournament with some of our friends, and it can get vicious, especially when there's alcohol involved later on.
I can say that. I'm unfortunately awful at it, so I just get beaten. But I'm quite okay with that because it's still fun.
Yeah, it is a great fun group game, and you've not fallen into the trap of having the weekly quiz then. The lockdown quiz.
There is a good one we've done about 3 or 4 times with people from FizzPop. That's an online stream quiz, and you can all type the answers. It's really well done. I'll send you a link. You have to post it. It's a good quiz, but we've only done it 3 times because I think we got bored of being on Zoom and Teams all day, every day at work.
Yeah.
So I think it didn't quite work. We've also started we've just started a new game in our group of friends, which is sending random Amazon stuff to them. I've just received some clay, so I think I'm supposed to be sculpting something. Which this is how I'm getting through lockdown. So with that's a new game that I've decided to start playing with some of our friends.
No, that sounds really cool. It sounds a great way to keep yourself occupied. It's just how to keep your fingers busy, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have you got any plans for post-lockdown, or what you're planning to do with 3D Meetup and FizzPop?
So I think 3D Meetup, FizzPop it's only been closed during the official lockdown. It was just limited on numbers and the social side. So at some point, we've got some projects I'm working on with some of the members that are relatively sort of interesting. But 3D Meetup, I think we need to be safe for a few months before we properly start planning, because once I've paid the deposit on a venue, because it's completely community funded, so it's a bit of a risk on my part. We need to be sure it's going to go ahead. And also the community needs to get their confidence back, because people came from all over the country before, so it's not just Birmingham that needs to be safe. It's sort of England's got. I think someone came from Scotland, the last one. We nearly had a few visitors from China. It just didn't quite work out with flights and things for the last one. So it will be back. We're just sort of holding out because I think it's really easy at the moment. You schedule an event, like I've got tickets for Penn and Teller that I'm looking forward to, but I don't actually know if that event's going to happen. So it's quite, I think it's quite difficult. So I think we're going to be waiting for it to be clear for a few months and so we can run it safely. But we've got some big plans things. We've got at the last one we had someone who built their own. They built their own printed R2D2 full size. So a couple of people who were at the first one have started making them. I have part of one printed, so I think we might have a bit of an R2D2 collection there.
That sounds pretty cool.
Plus, a lot of people have designed some really cool things during lockdown. So I think the next one will be a lot of fun. It's just a case of when we've got to get there first. So I'm not putting too much energy into it. I will say, we've got sponsorship lined up who will cover quite a lot of the costs for when it's ready to happen. Because we're a community event, we're a lot cheaper than say an event at say the NEC, which is a commercial, where they'll, for the, so I think we've got sponsorships that are happy to come on board. So I think it's just a case of waiting it out. I think so. I'm hoping that'll be back. That's post lockdown. I'm looking forward to going on holiday and leaving my house.
Yeah.
I've got in November. So if it's all over by November, I've booked to go to New York.
Oh, great.
As in, I've booked the air. So we've done that. So hopefully, I think. So I've got many plans after lockdown, but I think leaving the house is the one I'm most looking forward to a bit more.
Definitely. And for people who've probably got interested in 3D printing or as a hobby over lockdown or want to know more about it, is there any kind of resources you'd suggest or people to get in touch with?
I think there's a whole community of us on Twitter. Follow me and I'll point you in some directions. You'll see that I'm tagged with loads of people regularly. But feel free to reach out and ask questions to me. But there's loads, just put 3D printing in. I think Prusa Printers has got a really good, they're a printer manufacturer, they've just got a really good blog with loads of, each month they focus on what a member's doing with their printers. But there's quite a lot. I think Twitter, some of the Facebook groups can get a bit negative because a lot of people have very strong opinions. Twitter seems a bit friendlier on the sort of, that's good, but have you tried? Whereas I think Facebook groups sometimes can be a bit, I'm right, people have very strong opinions, and I think they can be a bit off-putting. But Twitter's a good place, and Prusa Printers, who make probably one of the most popular open source 3D printers, have got a really good blog and community site, so it's worth having a look if you're interested. And hopefully in the future there'll be some more events and that you can go to and have a look at them in reality. I think there's going to be quite a lot of interesting tech stuff going on in Birmingham as soon as lockdown's over, because there's a lot of events put on hold, and there's actually quite a lot of investment in sort of tech events and that community in Birmingham. So I think you'll see a lot in Birmingham going on in that sort of area.
Fingers crossed. It'll be all back together soon. And where can we find your details online? What's your Twitter, social media?
Twitter is at Adam2070, and I'm usually on there. I'm not posting a lot at the moment because I feel that everyone's probably bored of posts of everyone stuck in the houses or pictures of their cats, which is what you get at the moment. But if you've got a question, just that, and I'll happily answer any questions about anything. And it's worth having a look on Twitter. If you follow FizzPop, the Makerspace, we're hosting something called, I think it's next week, we're hosting something called Makers Hour, where lots of makers around the internet post questions. And people are, and there's a set of questions, and everyone get involved and answer them. But it's quite a good way of finding interesting people to follow, and things like that. So I think that's next week, next Wednesday evening. So that will be going on. So it's worth following FizzPop on Twitter at that sort of point as well.
Brilliant. And where can we find information about 3D Meetup?
So again, it's 3dmeetup.uk. It's a bit, obviously, because we haven't done an event, it's a bit sort of a shell of a site at the moment. But if you actually know anyone who might be interested in getting involved, just get them to drop us an email, and we're sort of keeping all this ready on file for when we can run an event.
Yeah, and I'm sure when events are back on, you'll probably update the website as soon as.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think we're actually going to be moving it quite interestingly as an experiment to Raspberry Pi based web host. Hence why I've got quite a lot of Raspberry Pis on my desk at the moment. So that's one of these might be sitting in a data center because it's quite an interesting maker experiment. I think Raspberry Pi's done quite well this year with all their product launches.
Yeah, but their new Model 4 seems to be very, very popular.
The 4 is really good, but I was quite impressed. I've got one.
The 400?
I was really impressed with the 400 because that's a cheap computer most people can afford. So I think that's quite a nice product. I think it would have been nice if it ended up coming out a bit sooner. I think they would have probably sold a lot more as people were desperate for computers at the start of lockdown. But they're really nice little, they're good computers. I think it's quite interesting thing that sort of, I think Raspberry Pi Foundation has come out quite well this year.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with NVIDIA and ARM going forward as well.
I think we'll see what happens there.
Adam, it's been fascinating to have you back on the show, and definitely not going to leave it as long next time until we get you back on. But
cool.
Thank you for joining us back for our 5th anniversary special.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much.
And hopefully we'll speak soon.
Speak soon.
Heavenly shades of night are falling. It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a 5-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Yep. Oh, this is going to be a gas.
Where did you two move from? How long?
Yeah, watched that last night. Top quality drama from Marvel Studios. Good to see a lot of nods towards some of the comic characters that they've kind of been teasing us for a few weeks, but they kind of made very strong overtures to it, revealing stuff in last night's episode, which was really good. But as a fan of the comics, it's great to see these characters kind of made real, and with some nods to the kind of original ways they looked in the comics as well. Really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic. Well, it's been fantastic to actually have some Marvel on screen, even though it's a small screen version. It's something we missed a lot during 2020. I think we got so used to having at least 1 or 2 Marvel movies come out over the year. It's been like a real big strange change not to have that come through. So I think this has like kind of filled the gap a lot, and a lot of people are very happy that we've got some Marvel back.
I think as well, so for someone like myself who's not that clued up on Marvel, and even though I've seen most of the mainstream films, it's mostly like once, maybe twice. So actually, I think WandaVision does a really good sort of way of, it's enough of a story to stand on its own, and they do a good job of bringing people who aren't very savvy with the universe up to speed, as well as having enough content left for people who are like really big fans to really love it, really enjoy it, be able to pick apart every scene.
Definitely.
I think it's what they did with The Mandalorian, in a sense of making it accessible to a wider audience who may not have had any previous interest in Marvel or Star Wars universes. But they've made a show that speaks to a lot of people. I think it contains a lot of universal themes, and riffing off the idea of sitcoms is an easy in for a lot of the audience, because everybody at some point will have seen a sitcom of some description, whether it was Friends, whether it's Modern Family, older audiences with things like, The Honeymooners and I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and all that kind of stuff. So I think they've used a nice conceit to go, we can make our audiences comfortable with the show by using the kind of facade of a sitcom, but then we can kind of slowly feed them the kind of backstory of the Marvel universe and the more important things that have been going on with the blip and all the rest of it that kind of has got referenced in the show. So I think they've done a lot of good work with it, making it accessible to a big audience.
Yeah, definitely.
And on that, I loved the Malcolm in the Middle reference. I actually sort of whooped when they did the Malcolm in the Middle parody because it's like one of my favourite sort of American sitcoms, and I just it was lovely they actually did that sort of like nod to it.
Yeah, I think everybody was expecting the Friends intro for the 90s and to have like the Malcolm in the Middle, and it's kind of weird because that was like that 90s 2000s crossover episode, whereas the others were pretty much distinctly in a decade each time, whereas this time around it was very much so. It was like that kind of blended late 90s, early millennium kind of era. I mean, and we've had some big reveals so far. We'll try not to spoil as much as possible, but I think the internet already knows a lot that Quicksilver in any kind of form makes an appearance. And Coach from Geeks has said in the live chat there's a bit of Marvel fatigue with Marvel movies. I think that's been right. I think it's nice to have had it a year off and then to have this series to bring us back in rather than having the big action explosions constantly. And Lee's not a major fan of Marvel stuff. So, Lee, I think you're on mute at the minute.
So you won't upset anybody with saying anything controversial.
Lee, you're on mute. You're on mute in Skype.
He's just frozen. He's off doing his Mario making.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. He's back now.
Okay, so I think turning off my mic turned it off in Skype, and then turning it back on didn't turn it back on in Skype. But anyway, I'm definitely in the camp of there were too many Marvel movies.
Yeah.
Because for me, one Marvel movie is too many Marvel movies.
Yeah, Lee's not a fan of superheroes for those who've listened to previous podcast episodes. And also, before we go any further, I apologise for my very loud keyboard. It's a mechanical one, and I'm trying to minimise it as much as possible.
Throw a blanket over your head.
There was a point that I made earlier as well about the Malcolm in the Middle reference, about how Malcolm in the Middle was never on in the 90s.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I found that odd that they used that as 90s when it started in January 2000. Because I saw people talking about it. I was like, I don't remember that being on in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it literally was like the earliest point it couldn't have been in the 90s was when it started.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
I must say, what I did like was Paul Bettany channeling his inner Bryan Cranston. I think he got the mannerisms of Bryan Cranston down quite well.
Yeah. I mean, so the latest episode that came out last night for most of us was very much Modern Family inspired. So if you've ever watched that kind of modern fourth wall breaking talk to camera kind of sitcom, it really was channeling that vibe, and I think it worked really well. And again, Paul Bettany has been a revelation to me in this. He's such a great comedy actor, and I don't think anybody's ever realised before that he's really good at comedy. He's kind of like, his light's been hidden under a bushel, I think, in the previous Marvel movies, where he's been this very straight-laced android, whereas here he's just acting out of the park.
Yeah, and just to sort of echo back to what some of the chat are saying, like, yeah, I kind of felt as well there was a lot of Marvel fatigue. Actually, what I like about sort of WandaVision is it's leaning more into the kind of superhero elements now, but for the majority of the series, it's a lot of kind of slice of life with elements of it. So again, what we talked about previously, you actually get more nuance for sort of the characters who actually in the movie are kind of sideline. They've got little bits, and actually here they're full blown. You're not just seeing them to progress the plot, you're seeing bits of them just sort of hanging around, really living their life. So it's quite a nice direction, I think, for a Marvel sort of property.
Yeah, and this is something we mentioned previously on the show. It's Marvel films are so big, they're so bombastic, they're so special effects heavy. Character development kind of gets lost for most of the minor characters. You'll get lots tons of character development for the main Avengers. So like Iron Man, Thor, they've had much progression over the series, but all the minor characters haven't really had that much chance to shine. It's like they're very much in the background of an ensemble cast here. So allowing Vision and Wanda to have this show has really like actually given some development to these two characters.
Yeah, and I've got to applaud the fact they've gone with the weekly schedule and stuck to that, because that gives the audience time to digest what's going on. And the speculation that we've had over the weeks, you just wouldn't have got that if it had have all landed in one go. It would have just been spoiled straight away for everybody. So it wouldn't have let you kind of think, well, who is the villain? Who is that character? What's going to happen with that? And I do miss that sometimes with shows, that you have that kind of chance to talk. What do you think? What's going to happen? Who's doing this? What's doing that? And that speculation to become part and parcel of the whole experience, which I've really enjoyed over the past few weeks.
Yeah, we've had some great joys as well with bringing some of the more minor characters from other aspects of the Marvel franchise in. So we've had Darcy return from the Thor franchise, we've had Jimmy Wooken from Ant-Man and Wasp, and we've had Monica Rambeau in a slightly more adult form compared to what she was in Captain Marvel. But I think the dynamic of those three has really worked quite well as like kind of a subplot to the main WandaVision TV show. And it's like had some really good development with those. And I think Monica is definitely going to be appearing more in the Avengers franchise going forward.
I wouldn't mind the speculated kind of X-Files style show that they could be in. I'd kind of dig that, kind of like, you know, other crazy mysteries around the Marvel universe, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on around the Marvel universe that would fit quite nicely into an X-Files style thing, because you know we've got established the idea that there's monsters, that you know there's Draculas, there's vampires, there's werewolves, and all this kind of stuff.
There's witches,
and it would be really good. Allegedly,
lots of witches,
yeah. But yeah, that's the beauty of these shows and the comics, is that there's so many things and so many different stories they can tell.
See, that's like, you know, you're talking about an X-Files style show. I probably would watch that, but my worry would be they'd be constantly trying to tie it in with everything else in the MCU, and that's why I can never get into anything MCU related, because it's just like, you could, if there's like one aspect, but like you said, there's like various different things that they can do with the Marvel universe, and obviously with this show that we're seeing that, you know, they're playing around with like the sitcom tropes and stuff. But it's that problem for me, is that a lot of it doesn't interest me, but if there is something that does, if I want to watch that, I've got to then learn about a million other things that happened in films that I don't care about, and I think that's a real problem with the MCU, and I wish they'd just quit that.
It's definitely something you have to go both feet forward into, unfortunately, with Marvel, because it's such a big connected universe now. It's like watching The Lone Gunman without watching The X-Files first, for an example. It's kind of, there's that much backstory in The X-Files for The Lone Gunman. You wouldn't be able to separate those two shows out separately from each other.
I think that the difference with that is that is explicitly a spin-off of it, whereas, like, as I understand with the comics, is that they weren't necessarily all created to be connected, you know. And I think that's kind of my real problem with it. It's like everything got connected up, and now is just connected up, and now you gotta deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's something that's emerged kind of since the 90s more noticeably in the comics. Is before they all lived in the same world. That was the conceit, and the part of the whole thing is that Spider-Man lived in New York, the Avengers were in New York, or they used the backups of whatever it is. But they kind of did their own thing. And you know, I can't remember very much that when Galactus attacks the Earth in Fantastic Four, that it directly impacted on Spider-Man in his own book. And so they were kind of doing their own thing at the time. And I think it's something that's become more and more part and parcel of the comics a little bit, while they try to do the big event stuff to make everything seem more grand. But I would like to see more storytelling like that, Lee. That is just, there's these characters in this established world, and we're doing our thing. And it doesn't, everything we do doesn't impact on everybody else. Everything doesn't have to be a domino effect.
Yeah, because I think, like, I don't have a problem with like the connected world and them all being in the same world and having like little nods here and there, but it is the fact that it's plot points. You need to understand plot points of other things, and it's like, I'm not getting into that. Because like out of like the Marvel movies, like Guardians of the Galaxy interested me, and my favorite part of Guardians of the Galaxy was the first half, where it's just the Guardians of the Galaxy. But then as it gets later on in the film, you've got to start understanding everything else that was going on in the wider MCU, and it's why I feel the second one was better, because it was a standalone story.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's kind of that thing, isn't it? It's how much do you want to devote to one particular franchise? I mean, I think anybody who watched Game of Thrones probably feels a bit burnt by that, especially towards the last few series. And I think Marvel, for me, has been consistently good. If some movies have been fantastic, but for me, even a bad Marvel movie like Thor: The Dark World, it's still passable to watch again if you're a fan of superheroes.
and that's my problem, isn't it? So
yeah, it's very much, if you like superheroes,
it's like I can't watch the fun space rogues without having to understand what's going on with the superheroes I don't care about.
Yeah, but I think if you look at the flip side of that, DCU's had an awful time with their films. And Wonder Woman was a standout, and then Wonder Woman 84's come out to a middling reception. They tried to do their own internal universe with Batman, Superman, the Justice League, and it just feels like a pastiche of how Marvel have done well with the MCU. So it's kind of that flip side. It's like, do you want an expertly crafted story that's going to be across what is pretty much generations of films now? Or do you want standalone, watch it once, and then don't have to reference it again? It's both aspects.
I prefer the good standalones. Honestly.
Yeah, I think there's room within the universe to do that quite easily. You don't everything, like I said, everything doesn't have to connect to everything else. I'm quite happy for them to do standalone stuff. And strangely, concurrently with WandaVision, I was watching the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I liked from the very beginning, mostly because I liked the characters and the casting, and that's something that Marvel does expertly throughout their output, is they cast brilliantly. And I really enjoyed Agents and Shields, and there's nods to the wider universe, but that it's kind of off in its own little bit, doing its own little thing, and there's some references here and there. But I think once they kind of decided, I think the end of season 1, season 2, to kind of go, we can't connect to the bigger Marvel universe. We haven't got the budget. It was an ABC show, so it wasn't a kind of a studio show. And that did its own thing and did it well, and I really enjoyed that show. And I think Marvel's got the ability to do that. They could do a Werewolf by Night show, make a horror show. They could do, a crazy Dakota North detective show that's just a procedural kind of detective show. They've got the characters, they've got the world that they can do literally anything in.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to hear the views of people on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, on the live stream chat, and what you think would be best for Marvel going forward. Do you think you'd prefer some of these standalone stories, or do you think it's definitely something that you prefer, that interconnected, interweaved universe? Right, we're going to go into another quick interview now. This is Graham Woods, who runs Jules 19 Show on Twitter and Jules 19 Show on YouTube. You may have seen him and us in some of his videos. He made a horror movie Job a couple of years ago that Keith filmed and I starred in. And we did our little Mission Impossible short a few years ago. And he did a really cool little short movie called A Switch. But I really recommend you go and check out his channel. Welcome back to the show, Graham. It's been a long time since we had you on air.
When was the last time? 1987, wasn't it?
It must be probably about 12 months, probably since the last anniversary special.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But happy birthday anyway.
Thank you very much.
My geeky brothers.
5 years. We're surprised as well. We didn't think it was ever going to get that long. For what was originally a 6-week... Yeah, for what was originally a 6-week radio trial, it's kind of lived on a little bit longer than we expected.
It's grown and it's morphed and it's got a life of its own now, and it won't die.
We thought we'd invite back some of our classic guests who we've had over the years and who've joined us in our many adventures, mainly running around buildings with Graham, usually with a camera at least pointed at one of us or somebody shouting "cut." Generally, so we just thought
I'm not sure how I feel about being described as classic, Ryan.
Classy,
classy guests. All right,
classy guests.
Classy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we thought we'd see how you've been, what you've been up to, how's lockdown been for you, and how you've been keeping yourself entertained in a geeky manner since we've last spoken to you.
Well, I work from home anyway and have done for the last 5 years. So in terms of feeling personally restricted, this lockdown hasn't really hit me that way.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of people it's been very difficult because they haven't been able to see their friends and work colleagues and go to the office and commute and do all that stuff that a lot of people do enjoy. I haven't had to do any of that for the last 5 years, so it hasn't represented much of a culture shock to me.
Yeah.
I suppose what I've definitely missed the conventions. As you well know, I'm a Comic-Con fan. We've both filmed there pretty much every year for the last few years. So I'm a big convention fan. I've definitely missed that side of things.
Yeah, it's been really strange not to have that kind of regular booking in our diaries between March and November. There's usually
March
at least
that just punctuates the year, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of missing all of that last year. It was a really big, well, not a drain, but a really big part of what Geeky Brummie was missing. And the same for yourself.
Yeah.
And so your videos are always very popular. It's always a couple of
That was a lot of our
challenges.
content, that was, wasn't it? Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Now what we got to talk about?
But I always like your challenge videos where you like set two teams off to do things around a Comic Con or any kind of convention. Like
That's it. Yeah, Comic Con bingo.
Like the digitize the show one that you did a few years back as well.
Oh yes, yeah, that was another one because they were supposed to do another live show summer last year, which got cancelled as well. So yeah, not just conventions, other live events because I like to go to live music and live comedy. Cinema, obviously, all of that stuff has, it's gone. I mean, the last thing I saw at the cinema was I managed to see Tenet when that came out, which was end of September, wasn't it?
Yeah, The Great Confusion, as everybody seems to have named it.
Yeah, basically, I just sat there for 2 hours like that, going, huh? What? Sorry, we've got a cat on camera. Let me move.
It's all right.
Go down there. But I enjoyed it. I always enjoyed Chris Nolan films. Yes, they're confusing, but I think that's okay. It's okay to be confused, and it's okay for a film to leave you just wondering what the hell's going on and having to sort of piece together a story by yourself and not to be led by the hand through every little piece of the narrative. You've got to put stuff together yourself, and I enjoy that with Nolan. He does that for you.
Yeah, and you're a big cinema aficionado, and he's probably one of the last directors who thinks about cinema in their film and not the inevitable Blu-ray or Netflix or Amazon Prime release that everybody else seems to be jumping on now.
Yeah, I think there's him, maybe Denis Villeneuve as well. They've still definitely got their eye on the big screen, on the spectacle. Because we've got June coming out, haven't we?
Well,
soon.
Should have been out by now, but yes, hopefully again soon.
Yeah, which is a weird one for me because I'm a huge Villeneuve fan. I love all of his stuff. I love Blade Runner 2049. I love Arrival, even back to like Sicario, stuff like that. I love his films, but I've got no love for Dune at all. I found the books impenetrable. I won't go near the David Lynch film because too many people have warned me off it. Even Lynch himself warns people off that film.
I'm actually a big fan of Dune because, well, the best version I've ever heard of it is the Audible narration one because it's a full voice cast.
Oh,
so
nice. Okay.
That might be a good way for you to try and listen to it. I don't know if it's any work because it really works as a kind of word voice play. But the Lynch film's not too bad considering the constraints of the time that he made it in. If I explain
it was an ambitious thing to try and adapt back in the was it about 84? That was it.
Yeah, I think it's about 83, 84.
83, 84, yeah. So yeah, pretty ambitious and. Studios weren't throwing huge amounts of money at people like Lynch, were they? He wasn't Lucas or Spielberg, so he couldn't command a massive budget.
Well, he kind of inherited it after the whole Jodorowsky chaos, where H.R. Geiger had been involved and all the sets had been designed, and then it was kind of like, well, we're not making that one, so we'll just make it and give it to David Lynch, this auteur-director who's known more for his kind of like stuff like Eraserhead at that point in time.
Yeah. Although wasn't Lynch asked if he wanted to direct Return of the Jedi?
Yes, he was, I think.
He was, wasn't he? And he's like, "No, I don't fancy doing that."
Yeah.
I'd have paid good folding money to see a Lynch Return of the Jedi, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like his name.
Exactly how brutal the Ewoks were, man.
He's been pretty much with every single franchise. He's been with Alien as well, wasn't he? So.
Was he linked to Alien?
Yeah, I think he was supposed to do the original Alien 3 with the wooden planet.
Oh, is that the one? It's not the one Fincher did, was it?
Yeah, sorry, Fincher. I can't remember now. I think Fincher might have done 3. but I think Lynch was attached at some point.
Lynch, yeah, Finch. So because Fincher ended up directing it, didn't he? And didn't, what's he called? The French guy who did Delicatessen. He did one of them as well, didn't he?
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things. Yeah, the Alien franchise has not really. Alien and Aliens are pretty much the only two I watch.
Unimpeachable, and then they just kind of just dribble off and blur into this kind of life. And then you get Alien versus Predator, and then you get Prometheus.
And then you get Ridley Scott just not learning to leave well alone with things.
Ridley, stop it! Although, you know what? There's stuff in Prometheus I enjoy.
Yeah.
And there's the stuff in Alien. What's it called? The other one he made?
Covenant.
Covenant. The stuff in that I enjoy. There's elements in both of them that I really like. I like the design of the xenomorphs.
Yeah.
In Covenant, I like how brutal and nasty and physical they felt. But yeah, parts of it were just self-indulgent nonsense.
Yeah, I mean the bit where the main person in Prometheus is running away from the round spaceship.
No, yeah, Charlie's there on. It's like, turn left, Charlie's. No!
Yeah. Just let...
Huge metal donut. Just step 10 feet to the side. It'll go straight past you.
Yeah. There's suspension of disbelief in movies, and there's why isn't she just doing what any normal person would do and just move to the side?
Yeah, she's clearly a very intelligent and qualified interstellar space pilot who doesn't understand left and right. No, I'm going to run in a straight line. That'll work.
Yeah. Anyway, to segue to the topics of conversation, what have you been watching? What have you been watching over lockdown?
Well, probably like a lot of people during lockdown, I've kind of spotted in a few different new things, but mainly fallen back on a bit of comfort blanket TV, and rewatched a lot of old kind of friendly, familiar favourites.
Yeah.
So I've rewatched Community from beginning to end, Parks and Rec, Schitt's Creek, The Good Place. So I've really kind of leaned right into good, wholesome, unchallenging, safe comedy. Basically anything Michael Schur has ever produced.
Michael Schur and Dan Gore, between the two of them, have pretty much done all of US comedy for the last decade.
Exactly, and The Office as well. I went back through The Office, but it holds up for rewatching.
Yeah,
it's not gonna. You know what's coming, so you know you're not going to have to deal with any unexpected emotional wrenches or anything like that.
Except for little Sebastian.
Mate, too soon. Too soon.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of that. I've gone back through a lot of old friendly comedies and done that. But I have also tried to splash in a few new things. So I watched The Boys on Prime.
Right.
Which I really enjoyed. And that's not safe and unchallenging at all.
No.
That's some nasty television.
It's very much adult television is the way to phrase it, I think.
It's grown-up stuff, isn't it?
Yes. It's superheroes with the filters removed.
The stuff I think about now, scenes where I'm like, how did they make that?
Yeah.
They must have showed the script to the actors, and the actors were just like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, you got a contract. Do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not...
There's the dolphin. Get on with it.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be spoiling a sentence that if you get in the first 5 minutes, a super speed person runs through somebody else.
Yeah, and turns them basically into red mist.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of sets the tone.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And that then just sets the tone for the entire series.
That's the thing. It's shock therapy, isn't it? It's like, right, this is what you can expect. And it only gets madder. I mean, we get to the point of like laser babies and stuff.
Yeah. And I really enjoy
one of my favourite things.
Yeah, I really enjoy that Carl Urban seems to be loving it because he's been dealt so many rough hands with TV and movies, with like the Dread universe and like not being able to follow that up, and Almost Human, which I was a really great fan of, and then Fox did their usual, showed it all out of order, and then canned it to the late lightning slot to let it wither and die the same way they did with Firefly. Yeah,
he's not had a good shake, has he? So it was nice to see him leading that and having fun with it.
Yeah,
and even his accent, which was diabolical.
That's comedy in comedy accent greatness. Just straight up.
I watched Thor Ragnarok last night, and he's doing the same thing in that. There's a Cockney called Scourge. I was like, just use your real accent. Really? You're Asgardian. You can have whatever accent you want. Why they made you a Cockney?
Yeah, if you think about it, Chris Hemsworth is Aussie as well, so they could have just had them both as Aussie accents.
That's what I thought. Like, there's one scene, right? You've got Tessa Thompson, who's American, playing an English person. You've got Carl Urban and Chris Hemsworth, who are both Aussies, playing English people.
Yeah.
What do you do? Just
the only English person you got is Kate Blanchett, who hasn't got an English accent in that either.
Mickey Mouse, mate, really. Yeah.
The
Boys.
Marvel.
Questionable accents aside, I think The Boys was really well done, really well written, creepy as all hell in places.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely, I'm not going to say disturbing, but genuinely kind of, oh God, they did that.
Yeah.
In places. And I know it's kind of been explored before in stuff like Watchmen, and also, even to an extent, The Incredibles, the idea of superheroes and what it would be like to be in the normal world where superheroes exist and coexist with us and stuff like that. So it's been explored. It's not new ground that's been broken, but it was definitely done in a different way.
No, I think it definitely treads into the waters of a more realistic view to map the current way the world is run.
That's
whole
the thing, isn't it?
Corporatization of it. Which
the way they're marketed and franchised and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think that goes beyond The Watchmen with that. The Watchmen is great for the parallels of the whole Cold War at the time, but The Boys definitely does pick up on this modern interpretation of, if you did have superpowers and somebody came at you with a briefcase full of money to work for them, what are you going to do?
Exactly. You'd take it and you'd endorse products and you'd have movies made about you and you'd own your own line of like toys and clothes. And it's exactly how it would go. So I enjoyed that. What else have I been watching? Oh yeah, to keep it cheerful and light, I've been watching Adam Curtis's latest series of documentaries.
I absolutely love I absolutely love Adam Curtis. Hypernormalization and The Power of Nightmares are two of the finest documentaries ever, and it really, really annoys me that BBC always hide them when they re-release them. It's kind of like they're ashamed of them.
Don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because Adam Curtis is critical of the world and them and the media, and the BBC feel a bit kind of like, why are you picking on us, Adam?
But it's so true the way that he portrays stuff, and it's a beautiful thing. It's always a mix of stock footage, interviews, and it's always a visual feast alongside what is a very powerful narrative.
Well, yeah, because he wasn't he just given sort of unfettered access to the BBC library of archive footage and news footage and everything they've ever got.
Yeah.
And he must just go through it and
he
finds some crazy stuff.
Because it's just him as well for most of it. There's always a very small crew in an Adam Curtis documentary. Most of it is just him beavering away in the archives for a long time.
Yeah, and he writes and edits and narrates it all. I mean, I think the budget for this last one, right? Bear in mind, there's 6 parts of it, right? And each episode comes in at around 70 minutes. So that's like 6.5, 7 hours of content there, right? The budget for that was £30,000. He made 7 hours of content for 30 grand, which is you couldn't do that. I mean, like you say, when you watch it,
coming from two people who make content for free, we can't really say too much.
I mean, I'd have a crack at 7 hours of content for 30 grand if they want to give it to me. But if you think of what, I mean, I reckon, I don't know, I could be speaking completely out of my hand.
Yeah.
But I reckon the average episode of EastEnders, for instance, costs more than 30k just for one episode.
Even with all the sets being built, the amount of people they've got on, the amount of people on there, just for
crew and cast salaries and all that, guarantee it.
It's probably more expensive than an episode of Doctors.
Doctors is about $5 an episode, isn't it?
I don't know, it's filmed in Birmingham, so they probably get whatever money falls out of the piggy bank at the end of the BBC year.
Very true. But so Adam Curtis I've been watching. And as always, you'll sit and you'll watch all these, and then you'll be confused and sad and upset, and you go, I don't understand how the world works. This can't be true. And then you realise that now you believe that somehow Colonel Gaddafi, Van Gogh, Margaret Thatcher, and John Lennon were all involved in some conspiracy to assassinate Fidel Castro using Happy Mondays CDs. It's like, what? Adam, please stop, man. I was confused.
It's always used as a meme, but that picture of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got all the red lines and the fang hanging out.
The red string everywhere. But he does that to you, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because the way it'll start off with like, yeah, this is a fella called, Michael, who was a gangster in the 1960s in London, who then became a civil rights activist who hung out with Malcolm X, who then got executed for murder in Trinidad. It's like, what?
And then you think and look at your own life and it's like, I make a podcast or I do a YouTube channel once or twice a week, and I think I'm excited. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been Adam Curtis I've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of it in terms of watching stuff. I mean, I've watched the MCU movies in timeline order again, just because I think that's something you have to do annually for a giggle.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to have WandaVision to slot into that as well.
Good reminder. I have actually been watching WandaVision.
Yeah.
Well caught, Ryan.
It's been absolutely fantastic to have a weekly series where you're left guessing. It feels like this generation's Twin Peaks somewhat.
It's got that vibe to it, hasn't it? Twin Peaks, Twilight Zone, weird stuff, cliffhangery stuff. I mean, I know Twilight Zone's an anthology show, and they're not ripped, but yeah, Twin Peaks is probably a better analogy than my crappy Twilight one. But WandaVision.
It's not the Twilight movies.
No, not the Twilight movies. No, that's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, WandaVision's been amazing. I've been so impressed with that. I was hesitant because I was like, well, what are Disney really going to do with this? Is it really going to be that groundbreaking or challenging or interesting? And it really has been. It's been dark and weird and pretty bleak at times. And I think it's been written amazingly. And I think Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen in it have actually been stunning. It's just been really, really good. It's like nothing Marvel have done before.
Yeah, I mentioned this on the previous podcast. People forget Paul Bettany's been there since the first ever MCU movie. He's been there since Iron Man 1. And he probably thought, I'm just going to do a bit of voice acting in one movie, in a booth for 3 days.
And that'll be it.
And that'll be it. And here we are nearly, a decade and a half later, almost?
What, 2008, wasn't it? First time?
2008. So probably recording, 2007. So nearly 15 years on. And
exactly,
he's still working off the back of doing a bit of VA.
Yeah. And it's been so nice to watch because there's been so much in there that's so many throws to the comics.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, I don't want to always use the word Easter eggs, but there's been that stuff, hasn't there? There's definitely been an element of sitting there going, oh, it's that, oh, it's that, oh, it's that person, oh. Yeah. And they've tied so much stuff together. And there's a couple of characters that they've kind of brought in from Ant-Man, from Thor, from different films, and they've kind of brought them together. And I just think they've nailed it. And it has been like, oh, God, I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about it is if you do know that comic book lore, you're still going to be surprised with the way they twisted it around, because I think originally people thinking, oh, this is going to be House of M, or this is going to be the Vision series from the 90s. And it's completely playing around with it every single time of what you expect is going to happen.
You think you've got a handle on it, and they go, no, we're not doing that. And you go, damn it, what are you doing?
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of that came close to this in terms of just pushing the boundaries was Legion.
Definitely.
I enjoyed Legion immensely, and I know it's a lot darker and more adult than WandaVision, because kids could watch WandaVision. It's not going to trouble them. I couldn't really watch Legion because that had some seriously nasty stuff in it.
No, I remember the second episode where people start popping is probably that's when it's like they're taking this in a wholly different direction. It's part of the X-Men universe officially.
It is, yeah. And that's what WandaVision reminded me of. It's like, they are actually taking some chances, like they did with Legion. So no, I'm very, very into WandaVision at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a difference. I mean, we started off the first lockdown with Tiger King, and we're here in the third lockdown with WandaVision. It's kind of like it's both ends of the TV spectrum.
I didn't even go near that show, mate. I did not go near it. I don't want to know. But no, it's been good. So yeah, that's what I've been keeping myself occupied with, mate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And post lockdown, we'll definitely get you back in for a proper studio recording at some point. It's been far too long. But where can we find you online otherwise?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Jaws19show.
Mm-hmm.
And on YouTube at youtube.com/Jaws19show. Previously, I have been purely doing sort of videos and stuff around cinema and TV and the geeky world, but I'm also branching out into other stuff now. So I've tried some DIY. I've filmed myself making a table. But I'm still doing the pop culture stuff. I mean, my latest video is about The Mandalorian, which is another show I watched and we haven't talked about.
No.
I keep remembering stuff now. Mandalorian was very good. But yeah, I've done a video around The Mandalorian and about Gina Carano and her being removed from the series and all that kind of stuff. So I'm still keeping a bit of a toe in the water in terms of pop culture stuff.
And that's the great thing about producing your own content is you can take it wherever you want to.
So talk about what I like, can't I? I might do a baking video next month.
Awesome. It's Pancake Day on the day that we're recording this, so that fits in nicely.
That is true. It does.
Great. It's been fantastic to catch up with you, and we must speak to you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks, Ryan, and congratulations again on 5 years, mate.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much to Graham there for jumping on for an interview. If you want to check Graham out, go and check out Jaws19 Show on Twitter, Jaws19 Show on YouTube. He's done some really fantastic stuff over the last few years. Very worth your time checking out. But now it's time to talk Nintendo. And apart from the most expensive re-release of all time, I think I'm going to let Lee lead through this. Lee, have you got some highlights for us all?
Okay, so it's a kind of an all over the place direct. So it's it's an interesting one considering that it's been a while since Nintendo have done one for a while. We're getting a lot of ports over. We're getting things like Tales from the Borderlands, Outer Wilds, Fall Guys, and surprisingly, is coming to Switch. Stubbs the Zombie is coming back after forever, and that was a game that I'd never even heard of before, but it's now coming back. And of course, we're getting DC Superhero Girls Teen Power. I'm sure we're all excited for that one. And a Star Wars Hunters game from Zynga, Farmville's people.
Yeah, I was looking at that Star Wars Hunters game. So it's free to play. Mm-hmm. It looks very cartoony style graphics.
It's going to be typical mobile game just ported to the Switch.
Yeah, I hope it's just a ruse, the actual ad. It looks like a shooter, but actually it's a moisture farming simulator. And you're hunting for moisture, and it's just a ruse, and all you got to do is...
It did Zynga, so it's possible.
Yeah. Buying dodgy droids from Jawas is like the highlight of the game.
But I'd say sort of the big highlights. I mean, we've got a new Mario Golf is coming, which apparently is going to have a story mode with Mii's, because they seem to want to bring Mii's back, because they're also porting Miitopia over from the DS as well. There was, as you mentioned, the Skyward Sword remaster is coming, which is very expensive with the controller.
Yeah.
That is specially designed controller. I cannot find the price.
I think
off the top.
I think I saw it was $69.99 for the controller, I think, and $59.99 for the game. Considering you got the game and the controller and the soundtrack on the Wii for, I think it was $59.99 at the time. That's some expensive remastering going on there.
Yeah, because the original game you had to have the Motion Plus controller, the add-on for the Wii remote, so that it had better motion controls, but it was still terrible. I didn't like Skyward Sword, which is why, as soon as they said, "Oh, we've made it so you can use button controls now," I was like, "Oh, good. That's one of the two major problems I had with Skyward Sword fixed." I don't think they're going to fix the other one, which is that it's incredibly repetitive. Because the problem with that game is there's a lot of fetch quests that are mandatory, and it's you go to an area and it's find 30 of this glowy thing.
Yeah.
in the dark, and then do that for an hour, and then eventually you might get to a dungeon, and then you do that in 3 different places, and then you go back to the first place and get a different glowy thing. 30 of those, and it's like, were you sleeping on the job when you were designing this one?
They probably looked at World of Warcraft and Kingdoms of Amalur and went, people seem to really like repetitive gameplay at the moment, where it's just fetch quests, so we'll just release that as a Zelda game. Because, to be honest, it's probably got the worst storyline as well of all the Zelda games. I mean, at least Twilight Princess had a bit where you was a wolf for a little while. But it's kind of like it felt very basic to me as a Zelda game.
And I thought, and with Twilight Princess, Midna was quite a fun sidekick as well.
Yeah.
And much less annoying than, is it Fee or whatever in Skyward Sword, who just pop up every 5 minutes and be like, oh, by the way, you moved the stick to walk. I'm like, go away, Fee. I know how to play as Zelda.
It's like on the range of Midna to Navi, how far does this sidekick fall into the annoying zone?
Fee's past Navi. At least sometimes Navi would just alert you, but you could ignore her.
Yeah.
Whereas Fee is like, will interrupt what you're doing.
Which is a bit weird, really, that they're releasing Skyward Sword, considering Breath of the Wild has been so popular, and everybody's waiting, chomping at the bit for Breath of the Wild 2. It's like,
if they haven't got the news for it, they haven't got the news for it. I mean, they did announce that they had no news for it.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of those things where it's still just, especially with the last year and everything, it's probably development's been delayed, and they just don't really have much to report. Or maybe my surprise with the Direct was there wasn't more Zelda news, because there've been like rumors about them doing like a Zelda All-Stars similar to the Mario stuff, because it is the Zelda anniversary tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's the 35th anniversary, so I would have thought that they'd have done something with that, but it was just Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
And an update to Age of Calamity, but
that's what surprised me a lot, was the fact that I was hoping that I was going to get more remastered games, because I kind of skipped the HD version of Wind Waker, which is one of my favorite Zelda games, and I would have liked to have played that on the Switch with the mobile aspect, that I could just play that as I go along. But I would like to have seen some more remasters of the older Zelda games, or at least them introduce either an N64 on the virtual arcade thing, so you could play some of the older games. You know, they don't seem to have done as much with Zelda as they did with Mario, and they didn't really do that much with Mario, to be honest.
Yeah, considering these like 2 of their biggest franchises from way back in the NES days, they've not really innovated as much, it seems to be. And I suppose they were probably worrying about having Majora's Mask released again at another cost, probably. But yeah, I think a lot of people must have missed out the Wii U era of games, because the Wii was more of a fitness / sports console for most people, and the Wii U sold worse than a pair of soggy old underpants, unfortunately.
I mean, the thing with the Wii U was everyone thought it was the tablet.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, so...
Yeah, Gingerbeard Jenkins in the chat has said the best part about Skyward Sword was the stamina mechanic. That was just super limiting and didn't improve gameplay. Of all the games to choose to re-release, probably not the best choice.
But I mean, there were a couple of other sort of relatively major game announcements, because they had Splatoon 3 was the sort of big last reveal. And as a Splatoon fan, I'm very, very interested in that one. Very curious about like the whole like desert area at the beginning. Like, it feels like they might be opening up the single player mode, maybe. That could be interesting to see how they do that. And I mean, the standard gameplay looks the same, but now you can kind of like choose where you start on the stage from the looks of things, because there's the bit in the trailer where they target the area and jump straight to that bit, rather than just everyone spawning at the entrance and moving in, which I think would be quite cool and would make things a lot more chaotic. And I'm down with it being more chaotic.
Yeah,
it's not a franchise I've tried yet for some reason. I don't know why I've never played Splatoon. It's a bit weird. But what are your thoughts on that crazy, what looked like basically just another clone of Ninjala or whatever it is, where you throw things around? It was like, seemed like it was like Super Dodgeball Deluxe.
Oh, the Knockout Kings one or whatever it was.
What was going on with that?
My Twitter reaction to that was, oh no, this looks obnoxious. Because like at the beginning, and the trailer was really misleading because they start off with like you had like a Call of Duty style soldier and you had a World of Warcraft style orc and you had like this pixelated princess character. And I thought, were they doing some sort of like weird genre hopping thing? And then it comes to the gameplay and it's just Overwatch with rugby in it. And I'm like, what is this? What was the point of all that stuff at the beginning?
Yeah. It seems an ill-timed direct, to be honest, because we just had Bowser's Fury / Mario 3D World come out, and it's kind of like, you think they would have at least given a bit of a mention to that. There's like now available. As a bit.
I think they did. But I think it was like super, super brief. So
yeah, because that feels like a game that's been hung over since last year, and it's like, well, we missed the launch window. We'll just shove it out in the middle of February.
But then I think like the one game that seems to have caught most people's attention out of the whole thing was Square Enix's new tactics RPG, which currently has the terrible working title of Project Triangle Strategy.
Could it be any worse than Avengers?
But it's it's from the Octopath Traveler developers, so it's got that same art style where they've got like a lot of 3D models, but it's all made to look very pixelated, and you've got the sprite work going on in it, and like that game looked great. I was disappointed with Octopath towards like I think about halfway through the game it gets really grindy, so I kind of gave up on it. But up to that point, it was an excellent game. So I'm very interested in this new one, especially as it's like it seems to be doing for Final Fantasy Tactics what Octopath Traveler was doing for classic Final Fantasy. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes, and that does seem to have been like the big highlight for a lot of people because it was just such a sudden announcement of basically it's Octopath Tactics essentially, and it looks like an interesting one. So,
any highlights for you, Matt?
I would probably just say it is Project Triangle was the only thing that made me go, oh, okay. But I think my biggest issue with the Switch in general, which I've said before, is I like it as a console. I like the games, but I don't like the price tag. And I think a lot of this, like Skyward Sword, is like a perfect example where it's ridiculously priced. And the worst thing is that they don't really go down in price either. And even same with sort of Project Triangle, some of the Octopath Traveler before it, like a really good game, but it's the style and everything is quite indie, but it's still got a AAA price tag. I know it's Square Enix, etc. But I think to go from, let's say, when we went with the Wii, one of their selling points was you can have one of the other consoles and a Wii because it was that cheap and that accessible. And fair enough, the first party IP was still really expensive, like Super Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, etc. was still quite expensive. You still had loads of other games that weren't so
shovelware,
bad.
sorry.
But I think with the Switch, like it's all still pretty expensive for what it is, especially when a lot of it is just ports or sort of remasters, which aren't a bad thing. But
yeah, I mean, in terms of like the ports and stuff, I think the Wii U ports are fine because no one had a Wii U. So it's a way to those, because there's a lot of really good games that were on the Wii U, but like no one played them because no one had a Wii U. So giving them that second lease of life, I don't have a problem with. But yeah, I mean, like Nintendo's pricing is terrible.
Yeah,
like even I think something like ARMS, which came out like early on in the Switch's lifespan, and just has not come down in price. And you'd think a game that didn't sell very well, you'd think at some point they'd bring it down just to try and push it a little bit, but no, just gonna keep that at 60.
Because I've always viewed the Switch as like a companion console to me. It's like you'd have a PlayStation 5 and a Switch, or an Xbox One and a Switch. And I don't think it's ever kind of lost that tag because it's kind of an amalgamation between what was a Wii and a Nintendo DS pretty much sort of taped together. into this console. To me, it's the portable console. It's my secondary console. And although on the Nintendo store there is a great amount of Android games, and there's some fairly decent Android games on there, as you mentioned, the first party stuff seems to be so overpriced. Considering we're in the middle of a pandemic as well, to be asking that kind of cost for some people who may be unable to afford that anymore, it feels a bit like it is gouging on Nintendo's point, because they've stuck with cartridge and then they can therefore enforce that cost to people. Even with the digital downloads, sometimes the digital downloads are now more expensive than going into a shop and buying them. It seems backwards pricing a little bit for me.
That's why people make jokes about it's normally at $49.99 and now it's on sale for $42.99.
Yeah, but I understand it is a great way for people to get into more of the indie gaming scene at the same time. And I think it's become more of a power for indie gaming than it has for actual first-party Nintendo titles. Is there any particular highlights you guys are looking forward to? Which would be your game of choice? I know yours is going to be Splatoon 3 later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
With Triangle Strategy, it's close second. But yeah.
I mean, it does, to me, I think I've always been put off because it looks like Fisher-Price Overwatch.
But then it makes you wonder, are Nintendo trying to get a bit more esportsy? I don't know, because Splatoon has already got itself a bit of a scene, and in some circles it is quite well sort of streamed, that kind of thing. So are Nintendo trying to break into that a bit more, or are they just doing Nintendo stuff? You never really know.
Because I mean, with that, there's something just this morning where someone pointed out that Nintendo views Splatoon as one of their big franchises. So clearly, there's enough of a scene around it for that to be a thing. Because some people have been going, "Oh, but Splatoon 3 isn't a big announcement," but then you look at Nintendo's offices and there's a big mural in the hallway, and you've got Mario, Zelda, Isabelle from Animal Crossing, and an inkling from Splatoon, which sort of says these are our
Paul Pitt and Star Fox, man, sidelined completely. Are they in the back of a dusty warehouse somewhere? It's like, oh, I remember we had the space franchise. Right. Talking of the week, we're now going to transition into Lee's Picks of the Week, and after that we'll be speaking to Stacey from Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour. We're returning after that for the results of the Setting the Scene competition.
Hello and welcome to the portion of the show where I talk about my games of the week. A couple of weeks ago, Game of the Week was Nuts. No, really, that's the title. Nuts is a narrative-driven game about a nature researcher who's been noticing something odd going on with squirrels. Using cameras and other investigative tools, your aim is to keep watch over the bushy-tailed inhabitants of a forest because they're up to something. You're certain of it. It was such a bizarre premise for a game that I couldn't not make it Game of the Week. It's a game about being paranoid over squirrels, which is just wonderful. Game of the Week last week was Little Nightmares 2, the sequel to 2017's horror-themed platformer from Bandai Namco and Little Big Planet assistant developers Tarsier Studios. I adored the first game, which saw you play as a little girl in a raincoat trapped on a giant ship full of creepy characters who wanted to do her harm. It had a gruesome yet cartoony aesthetic that looked like some horrible stop-motion production. The sequel offers more of the same as you play as new character Mono, assisted by the original protagonist Six. It looks to offer more of the tense hide-and-seek gameplay of the original with more of the messed up visuals the first game did so well. I've been trying to keep information about this game hidden from myself to avoid spoilers, so I can't say much more than this, but I am ready to play this. This week's Game of the Week is Mutropolis, a point-and-click adventure about space archaeologists. You play as a man named Henry Dijon as he discovers a lost city on an abandoned Earth far in the future. I've played a little bit of this one, courtesy of the publishers, and so far there's a great art style and the writing is top-notch. If this holds up for the full game, it's looking like something special that could rival even the best LucasArts titles. There will be a full review of this on the site very soon. But for now, let's go back to the main show.
Welcome back to the Geeky Brummie podcast, Stacey. It's been a long while since we've had you on, and thank you for coming and helping us celebrate our 5th anniversary.
Oh, thank you for having me, and congratulations on turning 5. Yay!
You're actually like out of the toddler stage now. Then.
Are you in your own pants? No way.
Yeah.
Hold on.
It's like that episode of WandaVision. We're actually at the stage now where all the candles are on the cake together.
Yay! I love WandaVision so much.
Such a good show.
It's
such
so
a great
good.
Mm-hmm. But more importantly, how are you and how have you been and how's lockdown been treating you?
Cool, what a loaded question. I am. I mean, the honest answer is I'm all right-ish, I guess. Lockdown has been tough. On top of all the usual, not being able to see everybody and not being able to go out and do things and have fun. My husband decided to just have his kidneys fail in September for a laugh. No, I make it sound like he did it on purpose, but he did not. We went for an eye test and they said, something's going on in there, mate. And so we ended up in hospital and it turns out his blood pressure was insane and his kidneys fell over.
Right.
So sort of on top of all the sort of, general panic of a pandemic anyway, and the fact that, I couldn't see any of my family to support, I also had a husband who was in hospital for nearly 2 weeks that I couldn't go and see because of COVID. So, it's been really weird.
Yeah. Is he on the road to recovery now, I hope?
He is, yeah. He's been on dialysis and stuff for a few months now, but he's just started being able to dialyse at home, which is great because obviously as soon as he got sick, we were both considered to be high risk then, like we're a high risk household. But of course he was going out 3 times a week to have dialysis. So we were just like, every time he would go out, I was panicking that he'd have a COVID test at the dialysis centre and they'd say, well, you've got COVID and now we're going to have to take you into the hospital because COVID is a nightmare. So I'm steadily getting better. But I also work in an NHS charity, so work has been completely insane as well. It feels like it's been coming at me from all angles, and I cannot wait for a period where I can just sleep for 2 weeks straight or something. That'd be great.
It's one of the things that a lot of myself and my wife have been very lucky, to be honest. We're both still full-time employed. Though we've been stuck at home, we've not had any health scares or anything like that, and we can't really complain. We've been very lucky, and a lot of people don't see that aspect of it, I don't think, where they've been in a similar situation like myself where they have been lucky and they've not been able to have, unfortunately, they've been avoiding the experiences such as you've had, to phrase it that way.
Yeah, it's one of those things though where it's like, I don't know if it's actually kind of making me a bit more resilient though, because when Rich first got sick, it was like a meltdown. I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm literally on my own now in the house, and I mean, I am sort of your classic useless woman when it comes to household stuff. So had there have been, I don't know, a fuse box go or a giant spider in the house while Rich was in hospital, I might have just burnt the whole house down and moved out. So I was quite lucky that none of that happened. But I've sort of got to the point now where I'm kind of like, well, we got through all of that, so maybe I'm not a complete mess. Maybe. So that's been good. And to be honest, being able to keep doing the podcast has been fantastic, because it's a great way to keep in touch with people and chat about random shite that's not COVID. Can I swear? I just swore.
It's all right. I've got the bleep button ready.
I'm so used to swearing that I was just like, just words.
I'm used to it from your last few visits, put it that way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure I do this every time, where I'm just casually dropping C-bombs and whatnot, and everybody's looking at me like, stop it. I've got to say, it's quite a nice change to not be in the world's hottest studio, though, to record this.
It's been weird swapping to recording from home for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
It's just that having a different locale and trying to arrange it, and must be the same for yourself. Trying to arrange people for video podcasts seems to be 5 times as hard as rather than just saying be at a location at this time of day.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm not that helpful when it comes to that sort of thing anyway, because obviously I don't have a regular co-host, so I usually just ask any old Tom, Dick and Harry to come on the show. But I am notorious for being forgetful, or having a bit of an IBS episode. So it's like trying to nail down a day when both me and a co-host are going to, you know, remember to actually do it and then not be violently ill throughout.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite an achievement. I'm amazed that I've got this far.
Yeah.
With doing the podcast, because I don't think I've missed many. I think I only took a little break after the last live show because it drove me a bit bananas.
Well, I think doing 24 hours worth of content kind of gives you a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, I think a friend of mine did say that afterwards, because I said I was feeling guilty for taking time off the podcast, and he was like, "You just put out 12 episodes in the 2 weeks after the live show, so that's a year's worth of content for you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." When you put it that way, yeah, I'll go and have an holiday.
Well, it gives you a few weeks off and gives people time to catch up if they're listening on the commute. You are a podcasting veteran. I mean, we was talking about this a little bit before off air. You've been going for nearly 14 years now.
Yeah.
Have you noticed the surge of podcasts during lockdown?
Yeah, but not mine. If anything, I've somehow lost listeners.
Yeah.
No, podcasting is one of those weird things where it seems to have like peaks and troughs. There'll be times when I'll mention it and people will be like, what is a podcast? What are you talking about? And then other times when people come to me and be like, have you heard of Serial? It's a podcast. Do you know of this? And I'm just looking at them like, you know, crying in 10 years of podcasts.
It just seems like every celebrity and their partner now has a podcast.
Yeah, and to be fair, like, because I know a lot of people sort of complain about that, but to be honest, like, I listen to a bunch of those. I think some of them are really great. I think that's the magic of podcasting, really, is that anybody can do it and anybody can listen to anything, really. You know, I don't begrudge people not listening to mine because I don't promote it very well. I'm very British. I'm like, oh, do you want to listen to this podcast? You know what? You probably won't like it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's like I'll just give you the link. It's completely up to you. Don't worry about it. That very British way of doing it.
I made the mistake of buying like 200 business cards at the start of 2020, thinking this will be the year that I promote everything. Yeah. And now I've literally, the idea of handing somebody a business card just seems alien to me.
Yeah, it's like here's something I've just touched and breathed over.
Yeah.
Please
don't worry, I haven't licked it.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with one of the other guests, Graham, that we've had on previously, and he was really talking about how much we've missed the convention scene.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's going to be completely different when we go back.
Yeah, I tell you what, I haven't missed is like the con flu. Con crud. Definitely did that.
Being basically stuck in a warehouse with 10,000 people all bringing diseases from all over all parts of the country and like spreading it around.
Yeah, you may as well have just like everybody just had like a licking party.
Yeah, but how have you managing to keep yourself sane during the lockdown and the COVID situation? Is there anything that's really like you've sunk yourself into to separate yourself from the world?
I've just been like watching everything. I've got a bit of a notorious reputation for being the person who, for some reason, has a pop culture podcast, but then any time a guest comes on and goes, "Oh, have you seen this thing?" I'm like, "No, I've never even heard of it." In fact, so I've just been watching like anything and everything that I can put my eyes onto. I think Rich watched more than me, but we watched, I think it was at least 500 films.
Wow.
In 2020.
Yeah.
And nearly all of those were films that I hadn't seen before. So we're aiming for like a new record this year, depending on, you know, at what point we can get out and about again.
That's like at least 10 films a week on average. That's some strong going.
Yeah, there were some days where we would literally just like, I mean, on Halloween last year, we just did a movie marathon. I think it might have been eight horror movies we watched on the Saturday.
Wow.
We were just like, yeah, stick another one on. Why not? Yeah, it was a bit bananas, but it's one of those things where, you know, the joys of having things like Netflix and Mubi and like all the other streaming platforms, it's meant that there's just been like a constant flow of things that I can entertain myself with. It's been that, and it's been books. I've been reading a lot more than I normally would, because usually I've got the attention span of a fish. That's why I like comics, because I'm like, can read a comic in like 5 minutes and be like, yeah, that was good. Whereas a book, I've got to actually remember what's happening.
Yeah.
Who's this character and what's going on. But yeah, it's been pretty much just like staring at the telly for me.
Mm-hmm.
I need to actually exercise more. What I need to do is get like a step machine or something that I can do whilst I'm watching all the films in the world. But like, to give you an example of like some of the things that I've caught up on that most people would be like, I can't believe you haven't seen that already. I finally watched Fight Club last year.
Great film.
It is a great film.
Fincher's finest, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those films that so many people would talk about, and then they'd be like, literally cannot believe you haven't seen that. What kind of ginormous div are you? And I'm like, well, a pretty big one, to be fair. But it kind of got to a point where I sort of didn't want to watch it because I was like, what if it's terrible? Because I've put it on too high of a pedestal, but it turns out it was great, so I needn't have worried. But that's the level you're looking at of, things that I haven't seen that I absolutely should have.
Yeah. And it's been a great opportunity to catch up, as you've said.
Yeah.
And like the thing is, when you watch films like that, and then you watch other things afterwards, and then you get all the references referring back to that you missed the first time round.
Oh yeah, like The Simpsons has taken on a whole new level for me since I've started watching more films that were made like, before the past couple of years when I had a Cineworld card. Which reminds me, I'm not getting that back because Cineworld are terrible. I don't know if you're allowed to slander companies on your podcast, but but I just thought I'd throw that out there. Not going to get that renewed anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really that much choice of cinema chains left post-pandemic. No. I think we'll have Odeon and, as you've said, Cineworld and maybe one or two others.
Yeah, I never thought I would miss, the sticky floors and the other people of a cinema, but I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what was your last movie at the big screen then?
Sonic the Hedgehog. On Valentine's Day 2020, Rich and I went to see Sonic the Hedgehog, and to be fair, it was really good.
It's been one of the better video game adaptations, I think.
Yeah, it really has. It's one of those films that, I went in sort of not really expecting a lot because I thought, I do really like the Sonic games, but there's not that much of a story there in terms of changing it into a film. Which, as a total aside, is one of the many reasons why I dislike the Resident Evil movies, because there is a bloody perfect story there for a film, and you fluffed it up, lads. But yeah, with Sonic, it was like, I just want to have a laugh at this, and I did. I had a laugh, and it was adorable, and Jim Carrey was good value. Yeah. So yeah, that'll do nicely. Of course, I don't think it would have been my initial choice of last film you see at the cinema for a year, or maybe more. Yeah, but it's pretty good. I liked it.
I mean, there's much worse films that you could have gone out of the cinema on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I only actually saw 4 films at the cinema last year. So it was Little Women, 1917, Jojo Rabbit, and Sonic.
Yeah. A bit of a mixed bag there.
Yeah, just a bit. Just a bit.
No, that's really good. Any book recommendations that you've discovered?
Oh, well, I read a trilogy last year that I'm sure most people who care about sort of sci-fi fantasy stuff will have already read, but it was news to me. And I'm blanking on the name and I'm trying to stall and it's not working. I think it was called the Broken Earth trilogy and it's by N.K. Jemisin.
Not heard of it, so...
Oh, it's fantastic. It's about it's set in a sort of world where people can control the earth, and the weather and stuff. And I don't really want to say too much about it, but it's so well written because the lady who writes them is or was a psychologist, so she's got a really good grasp of character arcs and development and that sort of thing. So on top of being a phenomenally exciting in terms of the story, it's also you really get attached to these characters. And it was it was a fairly hefty couple of books, and I think I busted through it in maybe 2 weeks, the whole trilogy. Just loved it. Really good stuff.
That's always a sign of a good book, when you just try and get through it as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, and then you're sad at the end, some more.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some admissions to do myself. I mean, I just finished watching the Harry Potter franchise for the first time all the way through. So originally I'd watched it to Prisoner of Azkaban and never carried on.
Yeah.
but I took the opportunity to actually watch them all.
And
I don't think I'll be watching them again anytime soon.
yeah. I, for some foolish reason, a few years ago, did a Harry Potter marathon. So we started at like 6 a.m. and finished at like 2 a.m. the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the end and I was like, these films, and the books, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Like literally everyone is the same. It's just the kids are getting a bit older and like marginally less crap.
Yeah. I mean, they're good films and they're great popcorn entertainment is the best way to phrase it. But you can put it on and just forget about the world for 2 hours. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree that it's not a Star Wars, is it? At the end of the day.
No, and I do love a Star Wars.
Right, and what are you planning to do post-lockdown? Any plans? Anything coming up in the future?
Well, it is mine and Richie's 10th wedding anniversary in May.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is shocking to me because I don't feel like I'm grown up enough to have been married at all, let alone to have been married for 10 years. So, fingers crossed that we might be able to at least see some family, maybe. But for me, the big thing is going to be cinema and gigs. God, I miss live music.
Yeah.
So much. And food. God damn, I miss Wagamamas. Oh my God, I just want some gyoza in my life. I am outside of the delivery zone for a Wagamamas and it's so sad.
And a takeaway is just not the same, is it?
It's not. It really. It's like, and I keep seeing adverts on TV because I'm like, all those delivery services must be raking it in at the moment. But we keep seeing these adverts that are like, KFC, McDonald's, Wagamama's, Nando's. Yeah, we're outside of the delivery zone for like all of them.
It's very tempted to move house just to get inside the delivery zone.
Yeah, I did joke with Rich about just like, I don't know, renting an apartment in the city centre just so that on occasional days when we feel like it, we can go and live there so we can have a takeaway.
Yeah.
But that would be quite an expensive Wagamama's.
Very expensive, yeah. But, I mean, hopefully it shouldn't be too much longer for the UK with the vaccination schedule, fingers crossed.
Oh yeah, I've already had my first half.
Oh, congratulations.
It was very exciting
/
terrifying.
Yeah, I think I'll be at the back of the queue, but fingers crossed it won't be too long for everyone.
Indeed.
Yeah, and where can we find you online? Where's all your social medias, etc.?
Oh, well, if you want to hear more of this insane wafflings, or inane wafflings, you can follow me on Twitter at Stacey's Parlour, and that is Stacey with an E and Parlour with a U for my American listeners. Or you can find the show Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour at popcultureparlour.podbean.com or on your podcatcher of choice and all that other stuff that podcasters say.
And you've got a few other podcasts as well. I mean, I'm sure are you still doing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one?
Oh, sadly not, no, because we ran out of things to talk about after they stopped making the movies and we ran out of cartoons to talk about. But I do a show called Stace Bob and the Dweebs, which is about retro cartoons in general. And I also do a show on the Geek Syndicate Network with Barry Nugent called Stace and Barry in the Morning. Totally not ripped off from Community at all. Shifty eyes.
Yeah.
And you can find that at geeksyndicate.co.uk.
So plenty of entertainment there.
So much Stace everywhere.
You've got plenty of time to go back and listen before the pandemic ends and we all get out of lockdown. So really recommend you do. Stacey, it's been wonderful to have you back and definitely not going to leave it as long this time.
Oh, definitely. As soon as we're allowed to see each other in person again, you're getting a massive Stace hug. That's for sure.
Awesome. I've missed those. Stacey, been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And thanks very much to Stacey there. It's wonderful to have her back on the show. If you want to check her out, she's on Podbean at Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour or popcultureparlour.podbean.com. You can find her on Twitter at Stacey's Parlour. She's actually celebrating her 9th anniversary of the Stacey's Parlour podcast as well this month. So really, really good stuff. Really do check it out. She also does Stacey and Barry in the Morning, which is a great podcast, which is from Barry Nugent, who does Geek Syndicate. Really, really interesting. Check those out. But now it's time for the results of our Setting the Scene challenge. So if you were watching earlier, you'd remember I set Keith, Lee and Matt the challenge of beavering away and recreating a classic Mario moment. whilst we were recording this show.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. That was nice of you.
So
it's been entertaining hearing the noises coming from Keith's end, which you guys at home haven't been able to hear.
It sounded like an A-Team special when they drive into the van and the doors close. there was hammering, there was welding, I assume, at one point.
Pretty sure there's a power drill.
Yeah, I should have done a montage of the process.
So, oh, now it's the photographing stage. Metal clanging begins.
Right. Who wants to go first and explain their picture? Nobody gonna
do them in order of completion. Whoever did theirs first.
Okay, Matt. I'm going to reveal your picture now. So, do you want to explain to the audience what it is all about?
Well, clearly it's quite self-explanatory. It's a homage to Super Mario Brothers 3, but with a little bit of new Super Mario Brothers thrown in for good measure. I also tried to use my bin as a pipe, but the bin was black and the curtains are black, so you can't really see it. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my housemate for helping me with this recreation, this very detailed recreation.
Right. Lee, you're up.
Okay, so what we're looking at is Super Mario Brothers 2, which mainly because I looked at my various bits of gaming merchandise and was like, oh, I've got a Princess Peach and I've got a Shy Guy, so therefore I can do Super Mario Bros. 2. We've got a dice that represents the power block, and we've got like story cubes that represent the sort of grassy platforms that you have in that. The green Sharpie is supposed to be a vine because I didn't have anything that was just like green on its own, and yeah, just some Wii U boxes as the sky, because you know, got to keep it Nintendo, and also it's the right color.
And Keith.
Yeah. Haven't got any game-related paraphernalia around the house apart from actual games and consoles. So, in my real life, I've been doing lots of cardboard crafting for workshops. So I've got a proliferation of these things knocking around. These are cardboard tubes. They could come from the insides of many things, not necessarily what you first think. So I just thought, I'm going to recreate one of the first 3 Mario games using cardboard tubes to make tubes, obviously, warp tubes. And then they were also used to make a piranha plant. And then I just used other cardboard from the insides of off-brand cereal. You can see the carnage from that there. To create Mario, a mushroom, and a Goomba. And then just plonked them on the table in front of the window. And that was it.
Right.
Instant recreation of Mario.
Awesome. Right, so we're going to ask our audience. I'm going to be the final decision, like RuPaul, but I will ask our audience if there's any particular favourites they like. You can just drop it in the comments now. But I'm going to take them.
Do we need to sing a Mario song now as like our final thing? Is that what we have to do?
If you could remember the theme from the original Super Mario Brothers cartoon, starring Captain Lou Albano, there may be extra points allowed.
No, I don't know that.
No, I do know lyrics to a Mario song, but not that one.
We could just make something up. Super Mario, Super Mario, Super Mario. It's me, Super Mario.
Yo!
Yo! I didn't do a Yoshi, but yeah, that was too hard.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a video somewhere where many, many moons ago, me and Lee met the voice of Mr. Mario on our YouTube channel at one of the MCM Comic Cons, if you ever want to go back and check that out.
Mr. Charles Martinet.
Yeah.
Right, but I am going to choose my winner now. And Keith actually looks like it could be a Nintendo game. It looks like Paper Mario, the next series. See, if you'd said Paper Mario, Keith, you would have won this one. But
oh well.
I'm actually going to choose Matt for our winner. Just mainly because roping somebody else in. And what looks like you've shaved your beard perfectly to represent the Mario moustache in that picture.
I mean, it is quite impressive that Matt got John Leguizamo to partner up with him to create the Mario Brothers.
Yeah, but yeah,
it's a good kind of Mario in lockdown. You know, there's no budget for it either.
But
let himself go.
Yeah. So round of applause for Matt. And this also means that Matt gets to choose the next Setting the Scene challenge when we return on our next podcast. But time for us to go into an interview now. And Keith, you spoke to Steve Tanner from Time Bomb Comics. Do you want to just explain a little bit about that before we transition?
Yes, Steve is a very local Birmingham-based writer. He's been writing for Time Bomb Comics for a while. So obviously with the last 12 months, it's been a strange old time for small publishers who would normally make a lot of money from selling at cons. So I spoke to Steve about his two latest books, which are Brawler and the Kickstarter for his latest Flintlock.
I hope you enjoy.
And joining us now on our 5th anniversary show, we have the wordsmith extraordinaire, Mr. Steve Tanner. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show.
Hi there, Keith. Thanks for inviting me on.
It's great to see you. It's been a very extraordinary year since we've kind of last ran into each other, which would have been at one convention or other. So kind of how have things been for you during the past 12 months?
Well, to be honest, they've been really busy. I think, obviously, when it all we all closed down a year ago, first of all, March last year. I think, like many people, I was expecting the worst, but it actually turned out to be quite still a very busy year. I think part of it was because obviously one of the big parts of my creative year anyway are the conventions and shows, which all kind of stopped. But because they stopped, suddenly I think I found I had much more time to actually create the comics which I go to the conventions to kind of promote. So over the course of the year, even though I wasn't going to shows every other weekend, I was still getting a huge amount done. So creatively, it was almost not so much business as usual, better than business as usual, because I was able to just get my head down and crack on with things, and there was no kind of distractions. And as you probably know, for a lot of kind of creative people, certainly artists, writers, even before kind of things locked down, we tend to live a very kind of solitary existence anyway, because we tend to kind of do our creative work effectively in isolation. So in that regard, it didn't really change. I mean, the only thing that I guess changed in regard to Time Bomb Comics was that we had planned to release 6 titles last year, and we actually we rearranged the schedules, and we ended up only releasing 3 and bumping another 3 into this year, simply because of it just seemed sensible to do that without the backing of the shows which we use to kind of bolster our presence anyway. But it meant that we're kind of ahead of the game now. So this year we've got stuff kind of lined up throughout the year, and it's stuff which is kind of completely finished and waiting just for a release schedule to go. So it was professionally it was a strange year, but not a dire year. But obviously personally it was 2020 was just a nightmare year, I think, for so many reasons, and it's great to be out of that year, and hopefully 2021 will end on a more positive note than last year did for us all.
Because the last few months for you have been particularly good, because we've just had the second issue of Brawler hit everybody, and that's now, I think it's available online and digitally as well for people. I really enjoyed the first issue of that, because I as a child of the 1970s in the UK, the idea of anthology comics is something that I've always really enjoyed, and we've seen quite a few of those now coming out. We've had things like Spacewalk from Pat Mills, and then the guys at the 77. So it's nice to have some local produced comics as well. So how has Brawler gone down with the audience? I know the first issue received quite a lot of positive reviews. How are people responding to issue 2?
Really good, actually, which is great because obviously, I think with the second issue, it's a bit like the second album syndrome, isn't it? With the first of anything, what you're doing, you're selling the concept, you're selling the idea, which in many ways is a much easier sell. For people to come back and pick up the second one, the third one, or whatever, and they have to be enjoying what they've experienced from that first book. So what was really encouraging was that Brawler 2, there seemed to be a real kind of hunger for it anyway, but the feedback I've been getting from the people who've read it and so far has been great. They've really enjoyed it, and with people saying they enjoyed it more than the first one, which is great to hear. So I can't complain about how Brawler 2 has been received, and that's been our first release this year. So that went out. That was launched in January. So we started this year with a bit of a bang, really. So it's been great.
Is there a Brawler 3 in the planning? Are we likely to get a third issue?
I would hope there will be a Brawler 3. It won't. It's unlikely to be out this year. It's simply because the creators involved, they need a bit of time to put everything together, and we don't want to just rush it out for the sake of rushing it out. There was a long gap between Brawler 1 and Brawler 2, and part of that was it was one of the books held over from last year. So the original plan was to have it out in 2020, but obviously we kind of then pushed it back. So there was a slightly longer wait than we expected. But hopefully we can do a third one, or even a fourth one, if the appetite is there. There's certainly kind of the feedback we're getting is that people enjoy it, but it's just a case of making sure that the creators that are involved with it are happy to kind of contribute the stories, because we work it out on an issue by issue basis. So we don't lock in any of the creators as to any kind of extended kind of contract with it. We just do it as we go along. So all the creators that are currently involved in Brawler 2, they'll be contacted to see if they want to be involved with the next one, and depending what that kind of that response is, will kind of dictate how quickly we can get it out. Because obviously, if some of the creators decide no, they've enjoyed it, but their plate is full and they're with other projects that they're doing, then we then kind of trawl around to find other stories that would fit into the concept of the book. So but I would like there to certainly be a third issue and a fourth issue. Beyond that, who knows?
That's good. The other book you've got currently on Kickstarter at the moment is, I believe it's the 5th volume of Flintlock. Can you tell us what we can expect from this 5th volume?
Yeah, the 5th Flintlock book 5, that's currently live now, and that finishes on the 1st of March, the pre-order for that. And again, that's another one that was held over from last year. So we can see we're getting the books out now this year as quick as we can to try and kind of catch up a little bit. But I mean, Flintlock is a very kind of personal book to me, because that's the book which I write all the stories for, and it really comes from a fascination I've got with the historical period, the 18th century that the book covers. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of strange to kind of realize that I'm on book 5 of that series. I mean, certainly anyone that's been reading the series so far will kind of know what to expect from it. At the end of book 4, there was a cliffhanger at the end of the Lady Flintlock chapter. We picked that up straight away, and we end with another cliffhanger, it's quite a shocking one, to be perfectly honest, and that will lead then into the conclusion of the Lady Flintlock story in Flintlock book 6. There's also some other returning characters in there. We have Peg Sparrowhawk returns, which is the detective story that's set in 1790s Australia. We've got the Clockwork Cavalier back in a short story, and then that's drawn by Francisco Arcadiacono, who did the artwork on the Clockwork Cavalier special that we brought out a couple of years back. And we've got we would go to Japan again in the 1740s, and we got another tale from Honor, who is the blind geisha, and that's again by Caroline Parkinson, who's a local Birmingham artist. So it's kind of nice to have Caroline back on board for that. But I think one of the high points of Flintlock Book 5 is the cover, because it's by John Burns. Now, anyone that's familiar with British comics in any capacity over probably the last 40 years, 50 years or more, will be familiar with John's work, because he started off by drawing girls' comics in the 1950s, and then pretty much every weekly comic that was adventure comic that was published since then, he's had a part of. He currently paints artwork for 2000 AD. He does the Order. He was one of the artists on Nikolai Dante. He has an incredible pedigree. He's a real master of his art. So he's done the cover for us, and it's a beautiful cover, and it's kind of nice for me in a way, because it really kind of ticks two boxes. Because when I was growing up, when I was first started reading weekly comics myself, back when I was a kid, there were two artists whose style I began to recognize straight away. One was Ian Kennedy, who did the book 2 cover for Flintlock, and the other one was John Burns. So to have him doing the Flintlock 5 cover, it's from me, it's kind of fanboy heaven. It's wonderful to see kind of characters I've created being interpreted by these masters of their art. It's brilliant.
Yeah, John's certainly somebody that when you've seen his work, you'll instantly recognize it, and he's somebody that I've seen in comics since probably the early 70s. When I first started reading British comics, and having seen him go through the decades and still producing incredible art all the time, and you just think, he's a genuine master, and it's great to have Flintlock having somebody of that caliber and pedigree contributing covers. Because the other thing with Flintlock on your Kickstarter is you get so much anyway from the book, but also your kind of pledge tiers, and then all of the stretch goals that you get. It's like, it's a bumper package when you get anything from one of your Kickstarters. It's like, what do I do with all of this stuff? It's just so great.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's really so much intended, because it's all about anyone. That's the way I approach the kind of the Kickstarter things, very much as pre-orders, rather than these all or nothing kind of pleas for funding. But because they're a pre-order, it's about wanting to do something you can actually properly reward the people who are good enough to pledge in the first place. So as well as the one thing about all the certainly the Flintlock Kickstarter and pretty much all the Kickstarters I do. Anyone that kind of orders any of the Time Bomb books through the Kickstarter will always get that book at a better deal than it will be anywhere else, even at the shows, direct from me at the shows, or direct from Time Bomb afterwards through the website. It's about adding value, I think, because what better way to say thank you to people than to give them kind of stuff which is exclusive, is just for them, and hopefully they're little keepsakes that they can actually enjoy and feel worthwhile it was supporting the book in the first place. So yeah, that's a key strategy in all the kind of the Kickstarter promotions that I do.
Yeah, it's always a shame that you haven't got masses of room on the walls for all the prints that you end up getting from these, because it seems a shame sometimes to just have them stored away and not have room on the shelves or on the walls for them. But it's always, you just get such a good deal of from the Kickstarter pre-orders. You get so much from yourselves. It's great, and all the additional artwork that you get. It's a beautiful package. So if you haven't already pledged for Flintlock Book 5, get ahead for Book 5. And so we'll put the links in the show notes, so you'll be able to get onto those. But kind of away from your own personal work, Steve, has there been anything that you've been reading or watching over the past few months that's caught your eye, been a bit of a respite from? Well,
to be perfectly honest, I'm probably the same as a lot of people. I've been really, I don't get the opportunity to talk about much things that I watch, so because people rarely ask me that, so that's a good little question. But WandaVision, oh my, am I enjoying WandaVision? I am thoroughly enjoying that weekly little kind of bit of mystery. I'm loving that show. It's been great to enjoy that, and it's interesting really because when they first announced all the all the series, I think it was a couple of years ago now, I think, and they mentioned WandaVision and they mentioned the upcoming kind of Falcon and the Winter Soldier one, and I remember at the time thinking, I bet WandaVision that'll be the sleeper one. That'll be the one that'll really kind of catch your attention, and it really has. I'm thoroughly enjoying that. And there's only 3 episodes left, which is a shame. But at the same time, I've also found out this week that those final 3 episodes are going to be an hour long each. So I'm hoping with all of the build up, it's going to be a really, really good payoff. But I've been thoroughly enjoying that. That's been something which I've I rarely kind of watch episodic TV like bit by bit. I usually do it on big blocks and catch up, that kind of stuff. But Friday has become over the past few weeks my appointment day to kind of sit and catch up with WandaVision. I think it's lovely. It's brilliant. And actually, one of the nice other things as well about it is that it's something which I'm watching regularly with my daughter as well, who's 11. So it's become like a little thing that we do every week. Oh, let's watch it now. Come on, let's watch it. So we're both really excited by it. So it has that extra dimension of pleasure for me because obviously it's something I'm doing. Me and her, we sit down and we have our little slice of WandaVision and we get excited about it and then we talk about it afterwards. So yeah, that's been great. In terms of stuff I'm reading. To be honest, I support a lot of Kickstarters myself. I really do. I think at the moment I've pledged for. It has a little total, and I think at the moment I've pledged for 453 projects in total on Kickstarter because I think it's about giving stuff back as well. It's not just me putting stuff out there for people to buy. It's about me looking at the great stuff on there and buying it myself. That's part of the fun with it. So every few weeks I'll get an envelope through and that's the latest kind of Kickstarter book that I've bought. So there's been some great stuff from there. I've been enjoying the 77 stuff. I'm finding that really interesting. I like what they're trying to do there. The Sentinel, the little digest thing, again, I like what they're trying to do there. There's some, and it's a little bit different. So I'm enjoying the fact that these things are being released through Kickstarter. The other thing that's not Kickstarter, which I've been impressed with, and they've just had 2 issues out, is the Shift anthology book. I think it's incredibly brave launching a newsstand anthology in the current climate. Props to them for doing it, but I think it's a really, really nice package. It's 100 pages. It's a really good chunky read. So I'm enjoying that kind of thing as well. So there's always stuff which I'm kind of dipping into, but I'll be perfectly honest, my to read pile is huge and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger because even though there's been lockdown and all this I just don't have the time to do it because I'm one of those people that if I've got some time, chances are I'll use it to do something for to carry on creating something I'm already in the mix of, or trying to get something finished because I've got a deadline coming up. It's the sitting back and just reading for a couple of hours. It's a really rare pleasure. So it's that's why my to read pile is the mountain that it is.
It's always good when your to read pile never gets any lower and always seems to go up. It's a good sign. Steve, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. It's been great to have you along on the journey that we've had with Geeky Brummie for the last 5 years, and kind of seeing you at shows and hopefully supporting you with all the incredible books that you are putting out and all the other projects that you're involved with. So it's great that you've joined us for our 5th anniversary episode. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for all your support over the past 5 years. It really means a lot, and I look forward to supporting you guys for at least another 5 years. Long may you continue.
So if people want to find you online, Steve, to support you and the work that you do through Time Bomb, where can they find you?
The easiest place to start is the Time Bomb website, which is timebombcomics.com. So it's nice and easy to remember. So, you know, that's the portal to our online store as well. And also it's got our submission guidelines. If anyone wants to kind of pitch something to us, we're always kind of open to receive kind of submissions. Alternatively, I can quite easily be found on social media. So if anybody wants to connect with me on social media, they're more than welcome to hunt me out and get in touch with me that way. I think I'm quite easily found, and hopefully once the conventions do start up again, because they will start up again at some point, hopefully then you'll be able to spot me in the crowd there. I usually I've been told I kind of stand out from the crowd. I don't know how true that is, but you know, people are always more than welcome to kind of approach me in person if ever they see me.
Yeah, it's the subtle jackets that always work for you, Steve. Blend into the background with those. It's great. But yeah, again, thank you very much for joining us on this show, and all the success for the future.
Thank you.
And we're back. We're joined by Clytus and Inkling, a Red Panda and Thor.
I'm a squid now.
Apologies about the bit of a blip there. Many thanks to Steve Tanner for joining us. And you can find all of his stuff at Time Bomb Comics, on Twitter at Time Bomb Comics, or on Kickstarter, where they have their current Flintlock book 5 on for the next 9 days. So if you want to get some local comic books with fantastic quality, pop over there. I think that's pretty much it for us today. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for joining us, all the people who've been in the chat. Thank you for those who've been watching and keeping quiet. Big thanks to my co-hosts today, Keith, Lee and Matt. We really hope you've enjoyed this 5th birthday special, and you'll be seeing lots more videos on YouTube for us soon. But for now, don't forget to check us out on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all at Geeky Brummie, and YouTube as well, of course. Keith, where can we find you online?
You can find my regular ramblings on Twitter at hardluck_hotel. But the best thing to do for me is to tune in on Wednesdays when I take over the tweet pod for Geeky Brummie and tweet a bunch of comic stuff.
Brilliant. Lee, where can we find your details online?
You can find me on YouTube at BobThePetFerret. So go right above this stream and type BobThePetFerret in, and you'll find me. And you can also find me on Twitter at BobThePetFerret, where I do updates, and I tweet more generally at The Cheap Ferret.
Matt, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at matchstick_Matt, taking shameless selfies, or you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Matt Lovell, where I'm mostly retweeting Geeky Brummie stuff. And you can find me weekly on the Geeky Brummie website as part of the Gaming Roundup, where I talk about esports.
And you can find me at Ryan Parrish on Twitter, or at Probably Gourmand when I occasionally do my foodie stuff. I think there's a new series of MasterChef starting soon, so I'll probably be writing angry tweets about Greg Wallace for the next few weeks.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
We hope you enjoy this 5th birthday special. Thank you so much again. Thanks to everybody for watching who's been on as co-hosts, as guests, as interviewees, as supporters over the last 5 years. It's been fantastic. And here's for the next 5 years. But for now, goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Goodbye. Thanks to you, Ryan.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.